Hi and welcome to Nollywood Film Club. I'm Mr. C, a Viroko critic. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well. Had a very fun conversation yesterday. It was very juicy. It was a juicy conversation. It's not the kind of panel. It's not the kind of panel. It's not the kind of conversation we're used to. It's slightly new format. So my hosting skills is not. It's not at its peak. Forgive me for that. We do delve in, when I say juicy, we delve in so many areas. We talk about, people talk about films from the 70s, 80s. There's a little bit of what does Nollywood even mean, which, that conversation is not going away anytime soon. But yes, I think a very fruitful conversation. There's agreements and there's disagreements within the agreements. I like these kind of conversations. They're always very useful for me, even as a person. And the podcasts are great for even me, because like I don't get to appreciate as much some of the voices whilst hosting, because hosting can get a bit hectic, especially in a thing like this where you need to be a little bit spontaneous with the topics. But some of the topics we discuss are in the description below with your timestamps. You should see. We start off with our Nollywood movies so bad in the first place. Where are the issues Nollywood are having with the writer of the article we're discussing comes on to give us his response slash feedback. Empathizing with Nollywood filmmakers, we also discuss, and then we round it off with movies that we could suggest are moving in the right direction, at least at the time, right? Um, so yeah, no, I enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you will too when you listen to Nollywood Film Club discussing why are Nollywood movies so bad.
Of the article. Oh, I'm getting way ahead of myself. I should do the intro. All right. Welcome to Nollywood Film Club. We do discuss Nollywood movies every Sunday. Sometimes we discuss Nollywood conversations, such topics like today. Today we're discussing, where in this discussion is going to be inspired by, not completely the article we're discussing, but inspired by the What Kept Me Up article, which I will post up on the link. Uh, uh, why are Nollywood movies so bad? All right. Okay. So we will be doing different things. There are a couple of things I want to touch on. Number one, if we're going to, do we even agree with the statement that Nollywood movies are so bad? Do we think, and even if we do agree or disagree, like the discussion can go so many places. It's by, what do we mean by this bad that we're doing it in comparison to what? I guess that's the other part we would be holding space for. All right. Anyway, so do you want to? This isn't going to be kind of like film club where there's a quiz, where I'm following this because like not everybody might have specific things to say about all the questions. So we're doing this by just hands. So like the hands that go up, and then I guess technically a key. But I guess okay. So like happy to we will start with the premise. Nollywood movies even so bad, and then we'll go on to discussing like where the issues may lie. So, who wants to start us off? Are Nollywood movies actually so bad? Who wants to start us off? All right, nobody's saying. Nobody, all of you have not
I'll
become
start.
quiet.
I'll start. I'll start if I may.
Okay,
All right.
all right. Everyone just came quiet all of a sudden, but Echenat, go ahead.
Yeah. I don't think they are. It depends on how you qualify bad. And I've become a lot more charitable in my way of thinking about these things. I do have my own ideas of what makes a good and a bad film, but uh, I think that making that sort of qualitative judgment depends very much on the audience and the intentions of the filmmaker. So, I watch a lot of Nollywood movies on YouTube, and I mostly find them a lot more satisfying than I do the stuff that's released theatrically or on Netflix and Prime and the like. And those things are made for a very specific audience. And when I look at the comments on those YouTube videos, it seems that people are very happy with these movies. I don't know if they're bots or something, but I don't see anybody complaining for the most part. People do like these things. They're made for a specific audience and the audience likes it. So can you say that they're bad? I don't know. But also I think it it you have to judge a thing by what it is. And I've said many times that, Nollywood is not let's put it this way. Martin Scorsese would say it's not cinema. Nollywood really comes from the world of telenovela with the very heightened kind of reality and the intense sentimentality and the melodramatic plot twists. It's not really cinema in the conventional sense. It's telenovela mixed in with some of indigenous theater influences from old Onisha pamphlets, street literature. There are all sorts of things that go into Nollywood, and I don't really think that it is trying to be cinema in the sense that we know it. Now, when you look at a lot of the stuff that goes into Netflix, when you look at things like The Black Book, you look at Gangs of Lagos and stuff like that, I think they're trying to be cinema, and I don't think they're succeeding. Um, I have I have my ideas of why they're not succeeding, but I'll leave it for now. I'll leave that for later. For now, I'll just say that I don't think Hollywood movies are that bad. I don't think they're great, but I don't think they're cinema, but they're not bad for what they are.
Okay, all right. I'll come back to Ichene about what we can talk about in terms of things like the Black Book and whether there's a dichotomy in what we want to see about Nollywood movies. But Maximus did have his hands up first. So Shagun, tell us, do you think Nollywood movies are so bad?
Okay, Uchenna has pretty much said what I was gonna say. We need to. I think we've been boxing everything into boxing all the wrong things into just one package. I would say Nollywood is an entertainment industry, and in that light, they are doing okay. So, like he said, it's telenovela. It's not. We cannot. I think it's wrong for us to categorize what we have in Nollywood as cinema. No, it's not cinema because the definition of cinema is to immerse the audience in an experience. And when I sit in a theater, in a cinema, and I'm watching something produced in Nollywood, I'm not getting any experience. I'm just watching picture, and that. So I think we need to start to clarify that. And in that light, then we can now start to, because at the end of the day, it always feels like we are trash talking people's efforts.
Shagun,
we
sorry,
are doing that, but
when,
they have proof. Can you hear me?
all right, sorry, Shagun, you're cutting out. If you're cutting out, Shagun, I don't know. Maybe try coming off and on and again. Let's go to Vanessa.
Hi. So I'm not gonna answer the question. I feel like
Wait, hang on. No,
I'm
wait.
going to
Before
kind
it's
of,
starting
don't
to
worry, let
yours.
me land. Why do you choke on my throat? This man.
Why you started? I'm not going to answer the question.
Let me land. What I was gonna say was I'm gonna do corporate speak and piggyback of what Uchenna and Shegu have said. Because I feel like you keep having to repeat the question, and I don't think it's at this point necessary for you to repeat the question. I will say though, based off of what Uchenna and Shegun have said, I don't think the question should be, at least I don't think the question that they were answering is if Nollywood is bad. They were answering and slightly posing the question, what is Nollywood? Because they're saying Nollywood isn't cinematic. But we do, at least we did have a cinema language, a Nigerian cinema language. Has that been lost? Yes. Is what is now Nollywood completely non-cinematic? Also, yes. So this question is multi-layered for many reasons, because our industry has been in the industry has been in many phases. Um, and what is our cinematic identity and our cinematic language has been lost. And so it isn't exact. I think we're in a weird limbo. I will agree that there has to be something that we're quantifying this so bad against. Otherwise, what are we saying? What are we comparing this to? What is the what by what ramifications are we judging bad? Are we judging it against what used to be our cinematic language? Or are we judging it against Hollywood or Bollywood or the Korean industry? Like, what are the ramifications against what which we're judging if Nollywood is bad? From a technical point of view, from a technical point of view, with like filmmaking and sound and all of that, there are still bits of Nollywood that's bad. I, we have to be honest. And yes, while there is an audience for some of the stuff that's put out, um I sometimes can be part of that audience on YouTube, because sometimes it's just nice to watch stuff that doesn't really mean anything and it's just whatever. But there is an audience for that. But I think it's a bit reductive to also say then that there isn't an audience for an elevated cinema language, because there was an audience and there still is the audience. And I don't know. Yeah, storytelling bad. Let's not be. I get it. We don't want to come across like we're trashing Nollywood, but even just for the baseline of telling a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, with fully fledged characters who do not feel one dimensional, who do not feel like caricatures, who do not feel like cardboard cutouts, without plots that are going higgy haga, just the baseline of a good story. If that's the ramification by which we are judging, then much of Nollywood is bad. I'd not say the entirety of it all, but much of Nollywood is bad. But then again, the question is, what are the ramifications? But you already said in your speech that we're going to go there, that what are we? So this is the thing.
Yeah,
It's
we'll
like
go
it's
there. We'll
confusing
go
to
there.
answer that question if we do not know by what ramifications we're judging if Nollywood is bad.
Right. So, and I guess that's part of the point of the discussion. Actually, and Vanessa has touched on some of the things that I was going to bring up. Is that even if we want to say that Nollywood is is not, like, the one that Uchene put up, where it's Nollywood is not supposed to be cinematic, or is not supposed to look a certain way like Hollywood movies. Are there not still rules to that that sort of kind of storytelling, and like how are they doing by that standard? And I would argue, if we're talking about given where they're coming from, uh, they're not meeting, even to that standard. They're not meeting some of their intended goals. That people aren't that people may be enjoying them, is different. Like, I enjoy a lot of things, like people on Film Club will know. I enjoy a lot of things that I don't think are good, and so, like, it's not enough to say that people enjoy them. It's like, okay, but like if you ask them, well, do you think is good? Yeah, then that's a different question. So, like, when we say nobody should be skirting, some people are skirting, like, hit the point on the head. But yes, I understand why some people are having addressing it in different layers. But we'll get to all the layers. Of just Elizabeth, did you have something you wanted to say?
So I wanted to say that, so we're not addressing if why Nollywood movies are so bad. You're asking if we think it's bad, which I agree mostly with what Vanessa said. And also, I think Nollywood movies are bad, especially the ones we export. And I'll use that word in particular. If I'm watching YouTube movies, which I do watch, I watch Iroko movie, Ibaka, just name it as long as it's Nigerian and that's the Nigerian storyline. I'm there. I'm number one. I don't care for them in the sense that when I watch it, I don't. It's easier for me to stop watching if I don't like the direction the story is going. If I think they're wasting my time, I'm out. I'm on to the next movie, and then on to the next, and then on to the third, to the fourth. It's my time, it's my data, it's my whatever. It's bad. I cannot continue. I change it. Now, if I'm going to watch something that is being exported, Nollywood in brackets, on Netflix or the other blue app, Prime, it's bad. It's bad. In I know we are saying that how do we quantify it again because there isn't exactly something we're measuring right now. But if in the sense of how I personally would judge, technically, and that's why I don't like this dichotomy where we now say, yeah, sure, now we have good cameras. Yeah, the sound is awesome. And it's that we're celebrating the little things, which is not bad for us to celebrate, but it also shows that there has been an impasse, some form of plateau that we've achieved in such a way that in the past 20, 30 years, we've we've managed to stay just at a point and the same and when there is a comment, when there is some sort of, okay, this is not good, you get the same backlash, like, do your own, it's not fair, we're trying, there's no money, like, okay, I'm sorry. What do you want me to do? I'm I grew up on Nollywood, and if I'm saying that for as long as I've been on earth, it that it is okay and it is acceptable for me to keep patting in the back and just, you're doing perfectly okay. At some point we'll have to do more than this perfectly okay, right? Because I think I remember one time, or rather, the for me, the reintroduction to cinema, which happened 2009 for me, with Kunle Afalayon's no Irakpada, the second one, the figurine. And I remember the euphoria in my hostel. I would think I was in my final year. And a couple of my friends went to go watch it at the cinema at Silverbird Galleria then. And we talked all the way from VI to Ota, and we were also we're talking about the camera, the whatever. Again, that's for us was progress, right? And I'm talking about 2009 here, the story, the sort of story that was told, the way it was told, the directing, and we just went the yammering, go back to the testing, asking who is at fault, what do you think happened, da 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 da. And then for me, then it marked a shift because from my 100 level to like then, I dropped in Nollywood because I kept seeing the same. There was this Ogi Okoye movie. I finished watching it, and she wore the same clothes in the next movie I watched. I was watching completely different, and I was like, what the? And again, I just got tired. It was also the same time, we're having Beyonce versus Rihanna and all that. And I knew that was not for me and I dropped it. But within that period, I maybe watched one or two, three that I felt was good. But 2009 marked like a turning point in Hollywood for me that even encouraged me to start watching Nollywood again. And then we had Reloaded and so on and so forth. So my point is, if what I felt as at then, at that age, where I felt like this is the coming into Nollywood that we're waiting for, and now we're talking about how many years later? 13, 14, 15 years later. And we're still asking if it is bad. And we're still patting ourselves on the back for something that I thought we had reached a turning point some 14, 15 years ago. Personally, I think they're bad. We're trying to regurgitate. Again, this is not the reason why it's bad. We've not gotten there. But my point is, if it feels like there's an impasse, that there's a plateau, I'm sorry, I'm bored. It is bad.
Okay, I think we're already started going into some of the issues where they like. Is there anyone who wants to take a strong position, either whether it's bad or not? Like, because like I guess we've discussed about the nuance between like how we want to describe it or something. You can just unmute your mics if there's something you want to say regarding that, because all hands were up in the first place, so we've got to pick from people whose hands were already up, because I guess like there's I think there's something to the fact that I think it can be a way of getting past excusing, like, because like if Nollywood can't be bad, can you ever criticize it then? Because like, isn't it just it's just Nollywood? It's like, so that's I don't subscribe to. I don't subscribe to. I mean, like, I guess like it can be a position, but like I think it's not the position. It's not a position that I think is strong or that sustain much scrutiny. To be honest. All right. Okay. I've said a bunch. If anybody, okay. Yeah. Wayne's Rants, go on.
Okay. I think this is an age-old debate where the question is, can you say art is bad? At its core, right? You have people putting bananas on walls and they say it's art. And you technically can't criticize because art is dependent on what the artist wants to do and how his audience receives it. So because of that, people tend to shy away from this debates. I think Nollywood is bad. I think one reason why I'm going to say is bad, because you say you want someone that has a stronger standpoint, is I think for the larger part of it we are declining, right? I think who was talking about it? Elizabeth. I was talking about how we are patting ourselves on the back for the smallest things. But one thing that vexes me the most is like we think we've gotten past some things, and we see like 4 films that have like we're like, this is the base level, and then we see a big production that is a lot worse than that. So yes, I think art can be bad. Whether or not we're going to classify it and say, is Nollywood trying to be cinema? Is it trying to be telenovela? Is it trying to be an extension of theatre? I think we can still say in that vein that this is good or bad, because I think there are rules to every form of art. And for what Nollywood is, I think it is bad. And if we're looking at it at cinema, I think it's also bad. Does that mean that I think all of Nollywood is bad? Obviously not. But I think, yeah, it's bad.
Okay, all right. The one other thing I wanted to discuss was where the specific issues were in Nollywood. So do we see them to be in terms of the areas of badness? Because like if and then again, it would be like, what are we measuring it up against?
Can I?
All right.
Can I?
Oh, sorry.
Whoever. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know who's talking. Is it me or I don't know.
Just speak.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll talk after you.
Okay. See, sorry, I came in a little bit late, and I personally don't think Nollywood is bad, because I don't think it's kind of saying like Hollywood is bad or something. I don't think an industry something you can say it's bad or not. I can say individual movies, I can give a judgment to it. I can give a judgment to maybe how the production or trends in it. But for the whole, I cannot say that. Like, what am I comparing an whole industry to? But also the idea about not saying whether you can say heart is bad or not. I wouldn't necessarily say like heart is bad, but I understand what people are saying. The colloquial meaning of what people are saying. When somebody says something is bad, they're just saying that that thing particularly doesn't go to me, and there are some things that I just don't like about it. So yeah, you can say that, but if you're going to go into a philosophical something like, look, there are things that you will like, another person will not like it, and so there is no what I'm trying to say. There's no objective. Actually, there's a spectrum of objectivity that can go with heart, but there is no like obviously all through standard, all through something time, all through this this will always be seen as bad. This value would be bad. This thing about heart will always be bad. So I don't think there is no way I can. That's why I tend to stay away from saying bad as like, everybody obviously like this is value, like no value judgment, like this is objectively bad. Like I tend to try to stay away from that, but I do say it colloquially because what I'm trying to say is like I don't like this shit. I don't like this stuff. Just personally to me, that's my opinion. But I don't think you can. I don't think there is way objectively. Art can never be objectively like okay bad because it depends. It always depends on who is looking at it, how they're looking at it, what conversations they're going with it. So that's what I believe. That's what I would say. But that doesn't mean you can't criticize it. Like, I may agree. I may agree with the fact that the banana on the wall is hard. I may agree with that, whatever. But I will criticize it, and I will criticize what it represents and all those things. But I don't think it's just somebody saying, "Oh, art can never be bad," does not mean that it is.
All
You
right.
can't have criticism of it.
Okay.
But
All right. So it comes with the it's art is difficult to criticize. Call it bad, but it's fair to criticize. Okay. All right. So like I allowed the incomes go there. It's taking us a little back because she had the pro. She was saying that Nollywood, she wouldn't call it bad, but I would like us to talk about what the areas, the people who think Nollywood is as bad. Tell us what you think we're bad at, and by what standards. Otas, do you want to?
Yeah. I feel like there are a few objective ways to tell whether art, and in this medium specifically movies, are bad, especially for Nollywood. And when we're like, what is it compared to? Nollywood can be compared to itself. And there is a lot of material going back and coming forward, and you can always kind of tell where we started and where we are now. And comparatively speaking, I feel like we're worse off than we started. And one of that reasons, my primary reason, my only reason, is just that stories, storylines, plots, they have lost so much depth, so much meaning, so much story. On average, what you are looking out for when you watch a lot of these big movies is flash and substance, because that's all they seem to offer. Um, and without a story, like, what is a movie telling you? Nothing. But that's my reason.
All right, thanks, Otas. Mrs. City, did you want to?
Yeah, so I'm with Atas on the story thing. I think that, and again, Nollywood films have their fair share of flaws, right? I mean, Mr. C doesn't stop harping on about sound. But yeah, fundamentally, I think we have a story problem. And I'll take it back to something like Far From Home, right? And this is something that cuts across a lot of stories. I think when we got better cameras and we got drones and we got Netflix, where people could see our work, and it wasn't just limited to being put on Africa Magic or, rental from video stores or, Iroko Critic subscription, Iroko TV subscription. Sorry, we don't have a subscription. I think, I don't know. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not in their heads. I don't know what happened, but I think a lot of emphasis has now been put on how good things look, how explosive things can be, how dramatic, how many twists and turns we can take. And a lot seems to be lost in how these stories progress. So even when we do have a plot or we're trying to get, to different places, I use Far From Home as a reference point of how within an indeterminable amount of time, we had somebody going from a Brokey's girlfriend to the leader of an underworld organization, which will allow a lot of creative license, but it really was just the progression to that point, absolutely insane. And there were a lot of things that, moved in that way. And again, I think I go back to Uche saying, oh, there are people who are enjoying this. So, can we objectively say it's bad if people enjoy it? And I remember that there was a lot of enjoyment of the dramatics, right? Because it's a quick flash. It's like showing, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way to anyone, right?
Ooh, it's coming.
No.
Elitism. Go on, do it. No elitism.
I'm not being elitist, I promise, because I enjoy a lot of things. But it's like you show a toddler something shiny, right? And they're interested in it, right? It's, oh my God, a big plot twist. Oh my God, they put the guy in a cage. It's girl power, right? Because he's been a shitty person. But it's just there's something really lost in progressing a story, and I don't know what is going on behind the scenes and what they have to lose and what they're trading off, and what they're unable to fit in, and if there's an aversion to leaving some things on the cutting floor, or for something that's a series, like moving something to the next season and just taking a bit of time to develop something. I remember somebody complaining last week that we were saying there was no character development in She, and how are we expecting character development in season 1? It's like I was baffled, really, because how am I supposed to care or root for anyone if I don't get to know them? And yeah, there's something really lost in letting us get to know characters before hitting big plot points. And I think that might be my biggest problem of all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a lot to pick from there. Sorry to the people who are trying to speak. I did say I can't rotate speakers today because this is a panel. It's not like I can say good. We've done good section. People are out. So if you do have things to say, drop in the comments and we'll read it out. So Mr. C has spoken about some level aspects of storytelling that will fall short. Like, does Nollywood movies not try to do the storytelling thing? And if it does, like, how can we not judge it essentially by the storytelling levels? Like, oh, do I care for the character and all of that? I guess that's the question worth asking. All right, so Omar, did I?
Okay, I thought I changed my name. Okay.
It still says O here.
Okay. No problem. So, I would say Nollywood is bad with storytelling. I really care about storytelling. I don't really know much about technicals and all that, but with storytelling, Nollywood is bad. It's when I say bad, it's like we had good in the past, and we got, we just changed the whole thing flipped, and it got worse. Looking back at when I was very young, like 6, 7, whenever I see Tunde Kilani movies, I just feel somehow like this is beautiful. This is beautiful for a 10-year-old to see a movie and like this movie is different in a way. I remember the time I watched Habeni, I was kind of, this movie is beautiful. People are not shouting in this movie. People are not yelling. And, and other movies, there are movies from Wemimo. Like a few months ago, I was watching Wemimo movies on, was it Kodun Kopokokpe on YouTube? And I was like, God, we've had good movies in Nollywood. We've had good movies in Nollywood. But our new movies, I don't think I can rewatch most of our movies. I've been trying to rewatch King of Boys, but I was kind of afraid that would I not hate this movie if I rewatch it? Would I not hate it? We've lacked the ability to tell good stories that you will be able to relate with the characters. You just want to put this person. We write stories in a way that, okay, I want to serve the audience. You are writing stories to serve the audience, but you, the writer, you don't feel like I want to serve myself. You don't write movies you want to see yourself. I don't know. Maybe they write these stupid movies because they like to see stupid movies. I don't know. But you should write movies you like to see yourself. Create characters that, they are human. Then your audience will fall in love with them. But you want to write this one, the audience will like this character to jump the fence. Things that don't make sense. They don't really, they don't have anything to do with your story, but you just put that there because you want the audience to have fun. I was working with one director a few months ago, and what I wrote, the director was like, there's no conflict here. These people, they're supposed to fight, this and that. I was like, calm down now. Don't you want people to, to relate with this character kind of in a way? No. let them do this, yeah, let them do. I was just angry. And someone told me that it's the director's film, oh, not your film, not the director's film. The director is the owner of the film. It's whatever the director says in a way. I just feel like we've lost the ability to tell stories that, you'll be able to see yourself in the movie that, oh, I've been in this situation. What would I have done? It's not every time you see characters yelling at each other. We sometimes want to copy Hollywood, but we don't understand the formula. These people use to make their own films. They are bad Hollywood movies. Yes, they are bad Hollywood movies. But Nollywood gets so bad because we don't even understand anything. We just want to do with things that audience will shout. Ooh, ooh. Sometimes I'll just see all these Africa Magic series. I'll be watching them. I'll be like, what are these people doing? How come? How did they jump from this place to this place? I was watching Battleground during the lockdown. Right? I was watching Battleground, and all of a sudden the whole series just changed, and things were just happening from drama to action. It gets so bad that we don't know any these things. People go to film schools because in film schools they told you that this and this and this. Then you don't even understand what they are saying, but because you want that to reflect in your script, you just write script. Bam. No time, no, you don't give your character the space, to feel like human being, you don't want us to understand them. You don't want us to learn who your characters are. But because you want to put action, you just write, So Nollywood is bad with in storytelling aspects. Actually, is bad in storytelling aspect and in acting too. Okay, we're not going to do that. So by storytelling, I'll say Nollywood is bad. Yeah, because we've had good stories in the past. Old Nollywood had stories. Old Nollywood had stories. Please don't let us lie. Old Nollywood have stories, but now we don't have stories. Though. Nah, yeah, we do. I beg. That's what I have to say, brother.
All right, thanks. Nollywood must change. Yeah. Okay. So I like the and this is in accordance with what Paraventure said. He says he wants to move the convo from the abstract and use real examples to illustrate the arguments. All right. Thanks. Paraventure hosting from the audience. That's fine. So I think one of the things I said teaser out recently was The Griot was a film that seemed to still have like what I would see as our it felt like where our movies have been coming from, whilst paying attention to world building, whilst paying attention to character development, whilst paying attention to chemistry, good acting. And that's an example of something that we can say good, yes, this thing has done good well. Like, and in fact, within that same film, right, there's an ending, the ending that the movie chose that almost everybody, my mother-in-law included, who likes She Must Be Obeyed, thinks the ending for the ending for The Greer is trash. Like, it seems to be to be honest, like there are some things that you can go, yes, I'm not in the art. Let's not call it good or bad. I think it's where, in fact, I'm just thinking about it. Like, I don't know whether it's coherent to say you can't call it good or bad and say you can criticize art. But yeah, for me, like we have examples of good storytelling. Like if you want to talk about Nigerian cinema, you have Eyumofe is also there. If you want to talk about storytelling, well, I think there's some Iroko movies that do really well with that. I would say Most of Mine is another example of what could happen when again we use our I won't call it basic, but we use the storytelling from our heritage, if you want to call it, without like trying to go to Hollywood. We've been able to we've done it before, and that's why for me, I think it's a fair. I don't know about So Bad. Maybe you can describe So. so is, one person's so is another person's a little bit or whatever. But you certainly call it bad because it feels like we're in no man's land where we're not really, our films of today aren't really doing what we did well previously, and we're not doing what Hollywood is doing well either. So like when this part where like we're kind of doing some of the things, we have almost all the bad habits of old Nollywood, a lot of the bad habits of old Nollywood with the bad habits of Hollywood. And it's just a terrible mixture, generally, especially for like the movies we put on Netflix. But do people have examples of areas they want to go compare, whether it be good Nollywood or bad Nollywood?
Yes, I do want to say something, and I want to speak with examples too.
Go on.
Now, earlier when I said that I don't think Nollywood is bad, I didn't want to give the impression that I am excusing Nollywood from any kind of critique at all. I just don't think that Nollywood is bad holistically. Of course, there are specific areas that there are problems. The sound is always bad. I think the cinematography is bad, almost always. Even the movies that people think are good. I think that, a lot of Nigerians have become accustomed to thinking of cinematography as, quote unquote, picture quality. So people say, oh, the picture was very clear, good cinematography. No, that's not what cinematography is. Cinematography is about framing. It's about blocking. It's about camera movement. It's about focal length. It's about all kinds of things. It's about creating a mood and a tone and an atmosphere. And I think that almost no Nigerian movie that I've watched, Nollywood movie, not Nigerian movie, does that effectively. So I think it also a lot of it has to do with the education of the audience, but I'm going to get to that in a moment. But I think that something that a few people have said, and which the article said, is true, and that it starts with the screenplay. People always say that Nollywood doesn't have stories. The stories are bad. I don't think the stories are bad. The screenplay is bad. A screenplay and a story are not the same thing. And it's about structure. It's about pacing. It's about having things in 3 acts. And in Nollywood, again, because of its roots in telenovela and in Nigerian television, it tends to be very episodic, and the story just rambles and rambles and rambles without getting to the point. Oftentimes, you'll see a movie that is sold about being about a specific conflict, and that conflict doesn't even appear until like 80 minutes in. And then they have something like 40 minutes to tell the story of what the movie was about, because they just spent more than an hour showing us all kinds of things that didn't matter. So, but the thing about that is that sometimes I think that the audience wants that. I think about this movie. What was it called again? For Maria Ebun Pataki, was it called? I think Film Club might have done it. I wasn't around then, but I think I've seen it in the backlog. You guys did it?
I don't know if it did it because it didn't get a global release. So
yeah, I think it was on Netflix for some time. I didn't see it when it was on Netflix, but it's on YouTube now. I would like to make references to it, but if people haven't watched it, it may be hard to understand. But let me try my best to do that. Now, the movie is about postpartum depression. Now, when it opens up, we see the husband talking to the doctor without sound. They're behind a closed door, and we can see them through the window. And from the reactions of the husband, who is played by Gabriel Afolayan, beautifully, by the way, we can see his sense of despair. And then in the next scene, we see him holding his new baby. And while the nurse says, she briefly says that the wife bled a lot and, it was a difficult pregnancy. The next scene, we see him sitting by her bed. I think he's sleeping in a chair by her bed, and she's in bed crying. And I think that's all this takes place in less than a minute. And I think it tells us a story right there and then. And I thought it was beautifully done. But when I went online to try to find some discussion about it, I found a lot of people complaining that they felt the beginning was too abrupt. that they wanted to know more about the woman. They wanted to know more about the relationship. They wanted to know more about what her personality was like before the pregnancy, so that we could see the difference in her and know that she was depressed. And when I think about it, I say, okay, if this were a Nollywood movie, the way Nollywood would have told the story, they would have started with a meet cute between the husband and the wife. We would see how they met. We would watch their courtship, about how his mother doesn't like her, and uh, her brothers don't like him, and then they overcome that. They would get married. We would watch them, um, having difficulty getting pregnant, and they would go to different doctors and pastors, and then eventually they would get pregnant. And then that's when we would get to the story of the postpartum depression. And that would have been probably like 1 hour or more into the movie. And that's what it seems people wanted. I think the Nollywood audience has been educated to expect the wrong things a lot of times. And that's the reason why I said that, it's hard to judge the quality of art without taking into account the expectations of the specific audience it was designed for. And Nollywood audiences really want a lot of stuff explained to them, and they really want to know a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with the story at hand. I mean, I saw some of the same complaints about Yahoo Plus. I mean, that was one of the reasons I liked Yahoo Plus, despite all the problems with it, because it had a very concise story that was told in 3 acts without a bunch of material that didn't have anything to do with that story. And I think, again, this has to do with Nollywood's roots in telenovela. People are used to stories that are episodic and meandering, and that go on and on and on. I mean, even in the classic Nollywood era that a lot of people seem to romanticize, every movie had like 4 parts, you know, 4 2-hour parts, 6 hours for a damn movie. It was more like television than, movies. So I think that's one of the problems that you get with even the Nollywood movies that are on Netflix and the like. They still have that DNA in them to be episodic and not really adhere to a 3-act structure. They just go on and on and on, showing you things that don't matter. Okay, I won't let this go on too long. There's one thing I want to respond to that it's Usher said, that we've lost the cinematic language. And I want to know, when exactly did we have that language? I mean, I don't know exactly what she's referring to. Are you referring to like the classic Nollywood of the early 2000s? Or do you mean before that? I
Can I
know a lot of people
respond?
have wait, let me finish. A lot of people have a tendency to really romanticize the movies of Hubert Ogunde and Ade Love and the likes. But a lot of people haven't watched those movies. And if you watch those movies, they're theater. They're
Have you
film.
watched it,
Yeah,
Uchenna?
I've watched them. Yeah, they're
I
film
don't
theater.
think you
Have you
have
And
watched
watched them.
Aye?
I don't think you
okay,
have watched them
wait.
because you,
Before I go, let me just say one thing. For example, Kongi's Harvest. That's a movie that a lot of people talk about. It was made in 1970.
Uchen,
It was
those are not
based
the
on
films
the.
we're
It's
talking
a
about.
play. It's a play. We're not
We're
talking
not
about a
talking about
play.
a
It's a
Kongi's
movie.
movie.
Harvest
No,
is
it's
a
a
play.
movie. It was actually one of the first movies
But
produced in
that's not what we're
Nigeria.
talking
And
about, Uchenna.
no, but I'm just trying to say, watch it. It's
Can
theatrical,
we
and
can
a
we
lot of those
land?
movies,
Can we land? Because
a
can
lot
I
of those
respond
movies
to
were
your can I
theatrical. Okay,
respond to your
I'm done.
What
question?
what
You can
about the
respond.
cinema?
You can
What about the
respond.
cinematography? What about the cinematography?
No, it was uninspired. If you ask me,
It was
it was uninspired.
uninspiring.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay.
Kongi's Harvest is
Okay.
on YouTube now.
Can
Somebody put
we
it on
okay,
YouTube.
can
Go
I
and
land,
watch it.
Uche? Because you've gone
Some
on
of
for a
Ade
bit.
Love's movies are
Can
on
I
YouTube.
speak, Uche? You've gone on for a bit. And I would like to correct one thing because this is where it is very clear that you have not watched Nollywood. You keep referring to Nollywood as having roots in telenovelas. That in itself is factually wrong. Factually wrong. The Nigerian cinema's roots are in theatre, not in telenovelas. Two very distinct art forms. So you cannot conflate the two of them together. In fact, the people who are having the issue with telenovela storytelling is current Nollywood, where there is a move of writers from TV series and TV shows, the AM 260s and the likes, moving into film storytelling and then having the issues with episodic storytelling. That is not true Nollywood. And this is the issue with our identity and the crisis that we have as a film industry. What is now known to be Nollywood did not find its beginning until the home video VOD video on demand era. That is Nollywood. Prior to that, we had cinema culture. We had actual films that were made, and we're not talking plays that have then been put on screen as films. We're talking actual filmmaking. People like Tunde Kelani exist, for crying out aloud. People like Tunde Kelani exist. There was a whole era of filmmaking. And this is the issue with discounting the Yoruba film industry. Because for many years, they carried what is Nigerian cinema on their backs. On their backs. And actually told stories that the Nigerian audience related to, cared about, saw themselves on screen as. That influenced culture. It influenced film, music, how we spoke, what we talked about, what we thought. We had cinema culture. People actually went out to watch these films prior to them being able to rent them and bring them into their homes. People actually went out to watch these films. Nigerian film audiences weren't educated on telenovela. That is factually wrong. The first few telenovelas did not start until when? And I don't even think we can count things like Super Stories as telenovelas, because those things weren't telenovelas. Those things were just...
Yeah, it's from what's the name? Fanny Coyote.
Yes, it's like
Funny
that is when
Okay,
we
Coyote.
can
I
start
don't want
counting
I don't want to
telenovelas,
interrupt.
Uchenna. So
Okay,
you
let me
are
say something.
speaking as someone who does not have a clear understanding on the history of what Nigerian filmmaking
Okay,
is.
let me say
And
something.
so
Let me
you
say
are,
something. Let me say something
you
real
are,
quick.
no, let me land. You went on for quite a while. And so you are projecting onto Nollywood an identity that isn't ours, right? The film industry has an identity, and that language has been lost. Whether we care to know about it or not, that storytelling language has been lost. And so to place upon Nollywood a telenovelic storytelling is fraudulent because that is not our storytelling identity. That is not where our roots in storytelling come from. Yeah? Hope I
Okay,
cleared that
now
up
let
for
me
you.
say this. Okay. Thanks a lot for clearing that up for me. I'm gonna say something.
We turn the stats a little down and just
No. I'm always cool. I'm
I
always
know,
cool.
I know. I'm just saying generally.
We can't turn
Okay.
you down,
Now
no.
I don't want to talk about myself, right? But I'm not a Gen Z. I'm not a millennial.
Okay.
Okay.
What
I'm an
does
elderly
that have to
person.
do with anything?
I'm an elderly person.
As
So
being his age,
let me tell you.
elderly.
I remember opening up the Daily Times and seeing the ads for Ade Love's Taxi Driver and wanting to see it but I couldn't because I lived in the East and those Yoruba movies were not being shown in my area. I can remember when Igbo film producers, if you can call them that, started shooting on video around 1983. I was around, man. Okay, so I remember when Yoruba people started shooting on video in the late 80s. I can remember when Living in Bondage first came out and the sensation that it caused. Now let me talk about this. Why I say that Nollywood comes from telenovela. Now you'll notice that when I speak about Nollywood, I always make a distinction between Nollywood and Nigerian film. I don't conflate the two things. They're different. Nollywood comes from telenovela, and I'm going to tell you why. It's not that we didn't have films before. Yes, we did have cinematic culture. We had movies that were shown in the theater. But I am just saying that those movies were not cinematic. They were filmed theater. And you may say, oh, Nollywood didn't come from this, it came from that. No, Nollywood came from a bunch of different sources. So the reason that Nollywood became Nollywood, people talk about Living in Bondage and say it was the first Nollywood movie. It wasn't. It wasn't the first movie that was shot on video. People had been shooting movies on video since 1983. Living in Bondage came out in 1991, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, Living in Bondage wasn't the first. And Living in Bondage, let me tell you what Living in Bondage did that was different from everybody else.
Wait.
Is it relevant? We're straying off.
Exactly.
We're
We're
straying off.
straying.
No,
No, no, let him
I
speak.
think
I really,
I think it's
yes, please
relevant.
let Eugenia speak.
I think it's
Yes.
relevant because it influences the reasons why Nollywood is the way it is today and why the storytelling is the way it is today. Now, Yoruba filmmakers had been shooting on video, and they were shooting basically videotaped plays. It was theater. Living in Bondage had a different style to it. First of all, it used a lot of actors from TV. Like there was a popular TV show at the time called Checkmate, and a bunch of actors from Checkmate were on Living in Bondage. It gave it a different feel. It gave it a more of a telenovela. It gave it more of a TV feel. And of course, it was in Igbo language. I always say that the first Nollywood movie was not Living in Bondage; it was Glamour Girls, which was made by the same producers. Because after Living in Bondage was successful and it was in Igbo, they said, "Why don't we make it in English?" And then that's when they made Glamour Girls. And Glamour Girls had certain features that are very, very unique to the telenovela style, which is very well, glamour for one thing. You know, a love for physical glamour and beauty, sentimentality, very heightened, dramatic situations. And these things became the style that became Nollywood, English language Nollywood. Yoruba movies was something different at the time. So I don't think a cinematic language was ever really developed. The Yoruba people were doing theater and just filming it, and then the English language stuff was basically based on television. And at that time, there was a telenovela that this was where telenovelas, that is, Spanish telenovelas first came to Nigeria. There was one that was called The Rich Also Cry, and it was extremely influential. And it influenced the ethics of Nollywood. And I think that those ethics have continued to this day. That the way people write their screenplays, it's more influenced by television and telenovela. And that's part of the reason why the stories don't work. That's the reason the pacing doesn't work. That's the reason why the characterizations are so shallow. That's the reason why they are so plot centric, and why action is not driven by character, but is rather driven by plot. And that's why things don't make sense. I'm sorry for going on too long. Who wants to talk
I
next?
would like to say something.
I would like to
Thank you.
say
I'm the
something.
one. Please,
Nope.
Okay.
please.
None of you. None of you. Bad and Mercy on the mic. All right. No, the King's daughter has been waiting for a bit. Has had her mic up. So please, just go on, the King's daughter.
Okay, I think conversation has shifted to a lot of technical language. Please, I'm just going to speak as someone who enjoys watching Nollywood because I generally enjoy watching things I can relate to, and Nollywood has stolen that away from me. So back to the first question, I don't know if Nollywood is bad or Nollywood is good. It's very difficult to answer that for me because someone mentioned somewhere in this conversation that people actually enjoy some of these things. You go to YouTube and you see movies getting 1 million views in 3 days. With Kadire would do a movie that I would cringe so badly at, and then people are watching it and they're enjoying it. So is it catering to the audience? Would that define good for them? Like, I don't know. It seems to define good for those people. So it's very difficult. But for me, the kind of Nollywood I want, I, I'll say that Nollywood is bad. And basically with the storytelling and the casting, which is a very recent problem. That's 4 5 years. Storytelling seems to go back as in it just something I think her sorry, I follow her, I've forgotten her name, but something Elizabeth said. It just plateaued. It got to a point, it felt good and you thought that we're going to get past and we just got to that point and instead of getting better, continued to decline. As for casting, that has just become a recent problem with nepotism and all that is happening in Nollywood, where you begin to see the same faces in movies playing this character that they played in their previous movie in a new movie, and nothing is changing. So the characters don't mean anything to us, and coupled with the fact that that's a character that I cannot even relate to, we have movies where you cannot identify the character anywhere in society. There was a reason Sister was celebrated as it was, right? People wanted a different ending to just teach society um, a different path to dealing with this problem. But the truth was that people could identify all those characters in those stories. Even the girl, as you had mentioned, it was very relatable conversations that would happen. But we would have things like My Dear Auntie Mo, we produce Far From Home, and I do not know who they are talking about. I don't know where. And the very recent one, which feels like who should not be spoken about. But I don't know where all those characters were gotten from because I cannot identify with them. And then they will now make one very sharp progression, and you're wondering from where to where? How did this happen? What was done with Far From Home, the character in Far From Home, where the girl moved from being somebody's girlfriend. People in Milkmaid did it, and it was believable. We almost sympathized with a Boko Haram person who raped somebody because they showed us how it could be done. But that's just an exception. Most people are like Far From Home, jumping and jumping. I just really wish. I always say something about Nollywood. I feels like people come up with an idea, gather the cast, and then write the story. And then everybody must fit into that thing that's written. So there's very small budget for the writer. The writer has to work with a cast that I'm assuming, please, I'm not saying this will happen, but that's what it feels like. The writer has to work with these characters, whether or not they fit in. And in the end, what comes up is a concoction. And then most recently, we're now trying to do twists and turns. I don't know how people thought that that's the problem with Nollywood. Like our stories are, we cannot do twists and turns better than Hollywood, at least for now. We can't do cinematography and all those things better than Hollywood, at least for now. What we can do better than them is tell our own stories, but we've left that one and face twists and turns that Hollywood will do better than us. End up cooking concussion rice that is not sweet. Thank you.
All
Can
right.
I speak?
I have a
All right.
quick
Thank
question.
you.
Mr.
Thank you, the King's Daughter. I do appreciate you guys. Wait, don't worry. People speak. Let me first thank her because, like, sometimes some people, because of some of people with your sweet technical language here, some people get discouraged from coming on. But I enjoy the perspective of somebody who also just watches films. But I would say that I'm sure there are some people who listen to you and also feel a little scared of coming to follow you. But no, I appreciate the angle. Michael I haven't heard from Michael.
Hi, thanks. Actually, I have a question for Joseph. Joe, you wrote the essay that inspired this discussion. I don't know if it's available to
Sorry,
answer
Michael,
it.
you are probably giving people headache at this point. Your sound. I'm sorry. Not even in the house. Try going up coming back on. Yes.
I didn't get that.
Your
What
sound.
did you say?
Your sound. Your audio is bad. Okay, it's better now.
Oh,
It sounded like
I'm sorry. I think
okay. That's fine.
I wasn't
Go
clear.
ahead.
So I said I would like I have some questions to ask Joseph, the writer of the essay that inspired this discussion. I saw him. He's here. I don't know if he's available to take my questions.
Sure, you can ask the question and
Okay. Okay. I would like to hear directly from him. So let me ask him. One, in his essay, talked about he cited visual literacy as one of the reasons why there seems a generation of filmmakers who do not understand cinema language, and then he used the analogy of shots being he compared shots to paragraphs and syntax basically. And I think Uchena also touched on it here, something about filmmakers and even the audience not understanding the language of cinematography. So I want to ask Joe that how exactly, I want him to expatiate on that, how significant is visual literacy to creating a generation of visually literate Nigerian filmmakers and how it could improve the filmmaking in general. How can that be done with government intervention? Because we learn to read, we learn to read and process words in school, but there's really not much attention in reading images and reading films. So is that something that needs to be introduced? How can it? What multiplier effect would it have? Also, the lack of visual literacy. Oh, let me not say lack, but let me say underdeveloped visual literacy, which Joe posited. Would you say it is tied to our oral culture? Because our culture, the different tribes, ethnic groups in Nigeria is very oral. Do you think it has something to do with that? That perhaps that's why we are not telling, stories so well in a visual medium. Also,
Ah.
in your essay, can I? I'm not done. Hold on, please. Yeah, in your essay, you cited the lack of a cinema culture as one of the reasons why the films are bad. And you also said that you also wrote that many of the filmmakers are always bringing up the argument of money, which I think is valid because they are in the business and they know what people like. So the question you also cite. Okay, let me quote something you said. You said this would be
Michael, I think what's going to be best is if
this is
you.
the final question, and I'm almost done.
Wait, no, wait, because I'm saying this because he's not going to remember all the questions. So what I think is best for you to do is if you type out your questions in a tweet, and then we can read it out to him, and he can actually have them look at them whilst answering him there. And then
I don't know.
because like
You're very
wait. Why people unmuting themselves? And then if you want him to speak, we might have to actually relinquish your position as speaker if that's okay with you. But like because like again, this sort of speaker thing is kind of full, and I said I wasn't going to kick off anybody else. But yes, he is currently on the queue. But Michael, if that's what you want to do, let me know if you want to give up your position for him to come and answer your questions, and then just tweet them, and I'll read them out exactly as it is. 4 or 5 questions there. Do you get Michael?
Yeah, you can take me off as a speaker. I'll type out the question. Thanks. Yep.
No worries. Okay. All right. Meanwhile, does anybody want to have a go at?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
You're on to me.
Oh, thank you very much. So first of all, I actually just wanted to, add on to what Vanessa was saying, or was it Elizabeth was saying regarding the cinematic language thing. So the thing is, and when we are talking about if Nollywood films are bad, first of all, I personally don't think anybody would set out to make a bad film. I don't think people are going to invest or put money into what they think is going to be a bad film. So I think that just leads to the question that is there a particular general consensus on what is a bad film? For example, we know that like Indian films, they have a way of doing their own thing. Korean films, they have their own way of doing their own thing. Like they have their own cinematic language. But for some Nigerians, some people might say that, oh, so Indian film is bad because they don't like the way the Indians use their own cinematic language or something like that. But then I just think that it's not necessarily about the cinematic language that the industry uses or whatever. I think that film in itself is I don't know if comprehensive is the right word to use, but film encompasses so many different kinds of art forms. It encompasses fine arts, literature, music, performing arts. So I think if we really want to find a way of discussing if Nollywood films are bad, then I think we have to look at the various things that make up a film. In terms of literature, we're going to look at it in terms of storytelling. Is the story good? What makes a good story? That's when you start looking at the characters and the plots and how the characters and the plots interact with each other. When you look at music, that's when you look at how the music and the scene complement each other, or how the music helps to tell the story. Performing arts, that's when you look at how what's it called? How well the actors are able to deliver their lines, or how convincing their portrayal of a particular character or a role is. And in terms of what Nollywood has been producing recently, if I'm going to be very honest, I feel like they are bad on all the different levels that make up film. So, yeah, so basically what I'm just trying to say is I don't think Nollywood films are bad because of the way Nollywood films are made. I don't think there's anything wrong with, I don't know if I'm making sense. I just think there is everything wrong with the things that's supposed to make a good film, if that makes sense. But that's what I want to say.
All right.
Sorry, I have
Michael, yeah, Elizabeth.
Yes,
I have
okay.
Can I go after Elizabeth?
Elizabeth wants to speak, please. Amadudu, thank you. Okay. You guys, it's a school night, please. Okay, so everybody has spoken about what they think is bad. I don't want to respond to a lot of the speakers, and I'm also going to cut out screenwriting because anybody who knows me on this show, we are always fighting screenwriting every other Sunday. So let me just drop screenwriting and may touch on what Timmy just mentioned, and that's about the cinema language, which is mostly identity. And I hear Uche now when he said, our language was mostly telenovela. And honestly, I will not agree, but that's fine because I agree with Van when she said that our language is steeped in theater, and you still see it in a lot of some of the way we actually direct. I'll come to that also because we direct a lot in prose. So what I think our cinema language is, like almost all that any cinema era from other countries, even from the Hong Kong, South Korean, we like melodrama. Almost every human likes melodrama. The Indian industry loves elevated melodrama, right? To the extent that it has become their cinema language. There are some movies I won't watch when it comes to Bollywood because I used to love them when I was younger. Now I don't have the patience for it. But I still seek out Bollywood. Like I would watch Lunchbox. I love it a lot. I talk about it a lot. I would watch Is It Love, Sir? I would talk about it a lot. It is now more to my own taste, right? These films are rather they are to my taste now because at some point I wanted something a little bit more toned down. But if you watch Disco Dancer back then, and you watch what's this new film that my guy has done, Shah Rukh Khan, you see that there is no difference. Again, this is how to build cinema language. And I'm not going to sit down, watch a Bollywood and be yammering about what I don't like because I'll be a fool because I am aware that I am watching a Bollywood language movie. It's going to be 3 hours. It's going to be over the top. It is going to be dramatic. It is going to be melodramatic. These are cinema languages, right? And then when you come to like Hong Kong film industry, like Wong Kar-wai, before he moved and developed what's most of them started developing afterwards was him realizing that there's they would rather tell day-to-day stories of people. Again, audience don't form an affinity for a certain type of film if it's not what you have been feeding them consistently. I say this thing all the time because if today Kelani releases Sharoide tomorrow, it will flop at the cinema. And I mean it if it was a new director, a new filmmaker, it will flop because right now our taste has been tuned into whatever it is that Film One tells us that this is what the audience wants to. We'll come to that later. If Kule Apulayo was a new filmmaker, made the figurine today, it won't make that 90 million he made in 2009. It will not make it. Of that was it 30 million, whatever. It won't make it in 2023. It's going to flop. And Film One will tell you that people don't like this kind of movie. And it is a lie. Do you understand? Because I think that it's garbage in, garbage out. It is what you feed your audience. That you develop your audience's palates, right? And this is what filmmakers across different Asian cinema era wave developed, right? They made sure that whatever it is they feed the audience is what develops the audience palette. Now, if we move on from then and look at the way, let's even remove the entire Nigerian cinema the even including the golden era, even though golden era they were shooting at theater or is based on theater, but it was also based in real life situations in such a way where it was also stories that were told in the community, which is also the way Hollywood developed. Let's be serious. So people were carrying books, Shakespeare, and were developing into films, right? So rather than continue in a way where we began to progress, things fell. So even if you look at the early era 90s Nollywood now, not the entire Nigerian film industry, right? But there was still a form to our story. And it's not true that they did not know structure or they couldn't have started either way. You can look at a film like Violated. The way it started, we didn't even see Meet Gate, but we knew that, Ego Boyo's character was looking for a child. Or you look at movies like Mortal Inheritance, or you look at movies like Silent Night, right? Movies that start quickly from the very first scene. These films were written 94, 93, 96, right? And it isn't, and I don't like to hear it when people say, oh, people like to hear backstories. There are lots of films without backstories. Mortal Inheritance, we knew immediately, we saw Omatala Jalade's character on the hospital bed. She had sickle cell from scene one. We knew what the entire movie was going to be. Or when you have Silent Night with, what's his face? Ramsey Noah's character. They introduced us to Black Arrow's character Killing. We already knew who these people are. It's not true that old films weren't doing this, right? In fact, sometimes I'm amazed at people like Andy Amenichi, people who then sometimes I'm like, did they go to film school? Because the way they write the structuring, the 3 acts completed, loopholes not found, right? But these were films written in a time where I felt, which I still say, that the film industry regulated itself before whatever it is that we had in the 2000s, but we won't get back to that. So the point is, Nigeria is lacking in an identity. The Bollywood structured itself in such a, they made so much from love. They were marketing love. They marketed love so much that everyone was watching them everywhere else. It's like the Chinese, Chinese whatever industry too. They were marketing arts, martial arts. The Asian wave was doing that. The Korean cinema, apart from when Hong Kong was doing a lot of the daily slice of life movies, we're also seeing the Koreans doing a lot of thriller. They were doing more thrilling stories, even though they were adding melodrama. You cannot remove melodrama. Personally, to me, I don't think anything is wrong with melodrama. You just need to make sure that you have an identity that you market. Now, that's on identity and audience literacy. Now, one other problem we have, and I mentioned already, is directing in prose, right? A lot of our directors don't understand that film is visual arts. No, the film is not what you have written as script. And we see it all the time in our script writing, right? So you want to explain, and I don't believe it that the audience wants to be explained. So I think it's demeaning, and I think it's like calling your audience idiots, right? And I think it's unfair because our filmmakers say, I put it in there. I'll give you an example. During Gang of Lagos, and there was this thing where Adesuwa's character changed clothes. I found that explanation so annoying, not so insulting, because there are 10,000 other ways to shoot that scene without telling us that, she's been wearing masculine clothes. So when the other guy said, why are you dressing like a man? That's why she switched. Look, you could have shown it by, she doesn't even need to speak. We could have seen her pop the trunk. We could have seen the dress in the bag. It's all about the visuals. Nobody had to say a word. But we feel like because I made a character say something, you can make a silent film. I hope you know that. Film started with silence. Like, we're not even saying anything. You can make a silent film and the entire movie will be in there. And I'll keep mentioning Enmity Gene from that, whatever that Netflix did. It's amazing in the sense that Enmity Gene has so much visual. And I understood that movie because all of the words said there could be 4. Same thing with how everybody used to attack James Cameron with Terminator 1. It hardly had, but you're not confused. It has beginning, middle, end. Okay, fine. His characters didn't say anything, but you saw the beginning, middle, end, right? Because this is film. It's about the touch of hand, the angle of your camera. It's the lighting, it's the mood. Sometimes, again, it is editing. But because we have... I'm going to call names, and I'm so sorry, I'm not dissing anybody. I just feel like there is a way they can elevate their directing. I love Bjorn Stevens so much, but I would say that she's one of the persons that I realize that she directs in prose a lot. She wants to keep explaining things, and I think in the bid to explain so much, the film comes off with all I, I don't know how to explain it. The emotion is not sustained, right? In 1 minute you're crying for a character, and then there is a plateau, there is a flat line, then there's that. So it's undulating. You're bored, you're peaked, your interest is peaked, then you're bored again. Then oof, what was that resolution, right? So our directors need to understand visual filmmaking in the first place. This is not a book. This is not literature. You're not explaining anything to anybody. And then when it comes to our camera, as much as we like to say that the camera, whatever quality was not good in the 2000s and in the early 90s, but there was something Nollywood used to do then that personally for me is this Nollywood filmmaking language, cinematic language. We have a way of doing those low angle camera, looking at the character from beneath, make them big, from the top, make them small to explain things. And there's another thing we do: static camera with the characters walking in and out of the frame. These are the little things that you might not have picked up, but at a point it was a standard Nollywood cinematic film language. Okay, maybe the cameras were bad. They were video cameras, right? But they served the purpose in a kind of language he was trying to do. So at the core of it, apart from screenwriting, is that we have a large identity crisis going on right now because everybody's trying to make a Z-list, B-list Hollywood film, and we're doing it badly because, again, this is not our language. So we're picking things from so many things. We're picking tropes, borrowing tropes willy-nilly, annoyingly at that. And then the stories comes off what? I'm not interested. And again, it might seem as though we're jammering and hammering at these things. I've seen Gangs of Lagos, of New York. Gangs of Lagos cannot impress me. I'm sorry. I'm not going to pat you in the back. But if you gave me something different I'd not seen before, maybe I would do a dance. I've seen John Wick, whatever with that. Oh, what was the name? I can't remember now. But it's not going to interest me because, again, you're pandering to an audience that already has their story. And this is why during the lockdown, K-drama sort of like came in. We already have Korean films already crossing over. Hollywood was already remaking Korean movies as far back as the 2000s, right? But these are the movies. But K-drama did something that the telenovela, did, but people got bored or tired of. These guys, most of the K-drama I watched earlier were bad camera, quality horrible, sound bad. I watched it. But now they have increased in leaps and bounds in a way that we have not. And I don't know where to put that really. And I really am not going to, thank the ocean for having water in it. Thank you.
So I speak now, please.
No, wait.
I don't think about it.
I'm so sorry.
I'll meet you. You just meet yourself. I'll meet you. All right. Okay. The person who I wanted to bring up next was actually Joe, because it is his sort of writing, but I think he has just dropped off from the speaker thing. So and I guess in his absence, you can speak. But
Thank you.
please make it brief. Keep it brief.
Wait, you're talking to Inko. So
yes.
Anyway, you always mute me unnecessarily, but it's okay.
There we go.
I'm already used to the abuse. So yeah, what I look, I kind of agree with Mr. Uche, right? He says Mr. Uche, with the idea where it says about cinematography. I feel like Nollywood should go learn from the best people to do cinematography for storytelling with mood and atmosphere. Koreans, and especially Korean dramas. I'm not talking necessarily about Korean movies. Korean movies are different from Korean dramas, okay? People need to know there's a difference. But K-dramas, they need to learn from that. They need to learn how to do cinematography from them, and then imbibe it into your own personal way. You can learn, you can pick up and imbibe it into your own personal way. I agree, but the thing I kind of disagree with is that indeed cinema language is not just cinematography. Cinema language is every other thing that happens that we see on the cinema, and that we can, if we watch enough times, we can tell that, oh, this is something that tends to happen in this industry. And I think with that, I disagree with him saying that Nollywood does not have its cinema language. It does. It's not the type of cinema language that you might think is a cinema language. But I will agree with him that they don't know how to necessarily use visual language. Not realize that the camera itself is something that could be used to tell the story itself, not necessarily like the characters have to say it in dialogue. Um, so I think the issue that we're talking about what makes Nollywood bad, current Nollywood bad. We are a club that normally just watches the movies that get on the more international platforms. I don't think that it needs to be better movies that get on the international platforms because Netflix is a company. They just want content, and content is whatever show and whatever there. I don't care. Like it's on it, it's on it. And people get surprised that this really bad movie is on it. Yeah, it happens here in Hollywood too. Really bad movies are on Netflix and on something, and I'm okay with it. I don't think there should be any regulation of movies. I think everybody should be able to make whatever kind of movies they should make. Now, with that said, I can criticize your movie. Um, the thing about those people, the ones that we particularly see their movie on this club, is that they want to be. I genuinely do believe that they love Hollywood movies, and also just to put it there, movies, film, cinema. The earliest movies were made from people who were basically working in theater. Remember, theater is older than cinema. Like the Lumiere brothers were actually not working in cinema; they were photographers. Um, the guy that made the old movies of Flying to the Moon, one of the very first filmmakers, Hero, that Martin Scorsese made about his a fictionalized story about his life. Yeah, that guy was a magician. Vaudeville, all those things. So movies language originally already come from like theater. So I all something. The thing about those people, those movies that we see on Netflix and that, is that they love movies. Like for instance, I'm gonna use, what's the guy's name that runs Anthill? Yes, that guy. Well, I can clearly see when he talks in his interview, he loves America. He loves movies. He wants to run an animated studio. He wants to be the next Walt Disney. You were born like 100 years too late, my brother, but he wants to be the next Walt Disney. Um, I get, I get it. I get it. I totally get it. But I feel like they kind of a little bit look down on Nollywood. And I'm not saying they don't love the movies that come. I can clearly see he has a clear passion for movies. He clearly does. But they copy the things from Hollywood, and they do these things because they think that if they do this, they get into, you can see a sense of accomplishment, a sense of belief of accomplishment into it. And it's okay. It's just not like Far From Home, like somebody chose. It's not localized in Nigeria. It's like very, very Americanized. And I you cannot see, it's very confusing about what your audience is. It's also very confusing because, and I don't think this is only a Nigerian thing. There's also another issue apart from like the lost identity, but there's also another issue is that I see globally, because I watch a lot of different global something and I try to learn so much about their industries and trends in their industry. You just start to see it where it's the story itself no longer, it becomes something that is about spectacle. I think that's the best. It's the best way I can say it. In America, American movies have complete. I don't even know. They're just like basically Marvel movies now, and the Marvel movies are no longer uninspiring. They're all remaking old things from like 1990 something, and they're repeating it for you, repeating it for you, repeating it for you. I don't know if anybody went to see Barbie. Barbie is just meta comedy upon meta comedy, which has already been popular in America for a while now. There's nothing really new about Barbie. It's just meta commentary, and they pick it up from the internet. I'm sorry, I don't get all this praise for Barbie. Barbie was a good movie, but like there's nothing new. The same thing with Nollywood movie. There's this trend in Nollywood movie where it's not necessarily meta comedy. It is it is it is literally copying America in a way that doesn't make any like. It's not like you're taking the technological ways from America. It's just like far from home. Again,
Yeah.
what school is that? Sorry,
Thank
let
you,
me finish.
Nathan.
Let me
No,
finish.
no.
What school is?
All right, I'm sorry. I've got to be strict today because we have to be because a lot of people are on here. A lot of people want to speak, and Joe is here before he disappears again with his network. I want to give him a word, and going. No, I was always going to do this anyway. All right, Joe. I don't know. Haven't heard. I think there's I guess there's an aspect to what we've discussed on here that you didn't particularly focus on, and I can actually understand why, because I think sometimes when we're saying Nollywood movies, I think sometimes the focus can be on what is a Nollywood movie, and I think it's one of those things uh, when you see it, you know it's right. Like one of those things, and I think everybody generally 95% or so of people agree on what it counts as a Nollywood movie or not. So, but given this aspect of whether what we've discussed today, just in general, that you didn't incorporate in your article. Any commentaries you have, or anything you wish you could add, or was there anything lost in edits? Sure.
Okay, Mr. C, thank you so much. Can we hear me? Is my mic okay?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, because sometimes it messes up. I've been following the conversation for a while now, and so many interesting and valid points have been brought up, and yeah, of course, I've learned a lot. There's something that someone said, I think it was Uchenna, that the history of Nollywood is rooted in theater, and then someone said in telenovela, and then someone else said theater, and then I can't remember who spoke after, but said that the melodrama is kind of what Nigerian or Nollywood films today kind of are banking on. And I would like to say that I think that sentimentality, that sense of theatricality is something that theater and telenovelas share. So I think it's definitely very valid that since we've had so many sources to where we are, because it's kind of like a hodgepodge of so many different things, right? There's like Uchenna rightly said, at one point the Igbos were doing their own thing, Yorubas were doing their own thing, and then English language films came up, and then so we've had so many influences, so many strings to get to this ocean that we're calling Hollywood today. And yeah, definitely all those influences can be seen here. I think one other thing I want to say is that I want to kind of commend filmmakers and filmmaking generally. Yes, a lot of Nollywood has been bad. I mean, I wrote the article, but I think because I wrote the article, a lot of people think that I'm just very dismissive of Nollywood in general or something. That's not the case at all. I'm also a filmmaker. I'm a screenwriter, and I understand how hard, how tasking it can be to actually create a whole world on paper, right? Characters, plot, everything, and I have to put it on paper. And I rightly said a work of narrative cinema will either die or live by its screenplay. And it's true. So that's a lot of work on the screenwriter. That's a lot of work to do in an industry where there isn't that much support, there isn't that much of a structure to fall back on and all that. I mean, imagine writing such a huge story in 2 weeks. It can be a lot. So just credit where credit is due. But then in spite of that, one thing I've noticed is that, like I said in the article also, that Steven Soderbergh said, a film is as unique as a fingerprint, right? What that means is that there has to be intentionality behind it. That is what film is. It's, I want to do this thing. Like, there's a vision. Usually the director has the vision, right? According to what Quentin Tarantino says a lot. The director has the vision, and then he employs different people to help him or her execute that vision. There has to be. And the audience has to see that this is what they were going for, right? I saw a film recently. I think it was my last review for What Kept Me Up. Probably going to come up in a few days. And I noticed in the review that it's an Hollywood film. I noticed in the review that there wasn't one close-up shot in the film. Not one. Not once did the director cut to a close-up or an insert shot. At every point in time, the camera is either in a wide shot or a medium shot. And I found it very jarring, very an hour into the film. But then after a while, I began to realize that it's not that the absence of a close-up shot in this movie automatically makes it bad. It's that there is very little intentionality behind the absence of the close-up, right? A director like Jim Jarmusch in Stranger Than Paradise, an indie film from 1984, I think, rarely used close-ups except maybe in scenes shot in cars because the camera has to be like close to the character's face if it's taking place in a car, right? But he kind of like they did away with close-ups and it worked. So it's not that, and I mentioned it in the reviews. It's not that okay. The fact that there's no close-up at all, like the director doesn't pull us into the character's headspace. I mean, that's valid. Like that's one of the reasons you use a close-up in the first place. But there's very little intentionality done behind that decision, right? So that is what I meant by like as unique as a fingerprint. I don't care if there are short films on YouTube where there isn't any what's the name? There isn't any, the camera doesn't show the characters' faces. It's just their hands, right? Because like Alfred Hitchcock says, the hands are just as expressive as the face, right? I can show you a clip of someone's hands shaking and you can tell what emotional state the person is in, right? So the entire film is just told by focusing the camera on their hands, right? A very intentional decision. Of course, it might be hard to make a narrative film that way, like a full-length narrative film, but intentionality is all it is, right? You're shooting a movie in black and white. Why are you shooting in black and white? Do you understand? You're shooting a movie with no sound, like The Artist in 2012. Why? There has to be a reason, and it's all about reaching that emotional crescendo for the audience, right? Most of the time, you want the audience to feel something. That's what cinema is, right? Again, like Tarantino says, the director basically is the conductor of the orchestra, playing the audience's emotion, playing with the audience's emotions anyhow he wants, right? So any tool you use has to be to that effect, has to be to push that crescendo further and further up until the climax, whether you're using a certain kind of sound, whether it's in black and white, whatever it is. And that is one thing I haven't really seen in Hollywood, yeah, especially in mainstream films. Because whenever we talk about it, they say, oh, you want them to be shooting indie films or artsy films, go to Europe if you want all those kind of things. No, in your mainstream films, you can have intentionality, serious intentionality. I mean, look at someone like Christopher Nolan. He's a mainstream director. But I would you'd be remiss to, what's the name? Find any Nolan film that you wouldn't at least enjoy on some level. So it gives you entertainment, but it also gives you so much to think about, so much to feel, right? At least most of the time, except when it's being too cerebral. Do you understand? Sorry, just one more point. Sorry. Yeah, as far as visual literacy is concerned, I said that film is it's basically audiovisual shorthand. That's what I said, and yeah, I still stand by that. It's shorthand. It's not supposed to give you everything, right? It's not prose, right? And the reason it's shorthand. Okay, let me compare it to poetry. Poetry is kind of is written shorthand, right? For instance, if I want to write a novel on Ibadan, I grew up in Ibadan. If I want to write a novel on growing up in Ibadan and all that, or just Ibadan as a place, I can write 100,000 words and release it as a novel. And then someone like J.P. Clark, all those years ago, decades ago, 50-something years ago, just wrote how many, just like a 4-line poem, right? Running splash of rust. Like it's distilled language. That's what poetry is. It's distilled into its barest form, right? To be able to give the audience that emotional gut punch. That is what cinema is. Shorthand, distilled visual language, right? And it's like I said, like I said in the article too. I said everybody can learn it, and I also still stand by that. It's just that we have to be very adamant about it. We have to be. I mean, people like Scorsese and the what's the name, the film brats during the 70s that ushered in new Hollywood. Apart from the fact that they were trained, they actually went to film school. I think they're the first generation that did so. They were learning from everywhere, from Hong Kong, from Kurosawa, from Bergman, from everywhere, and even from their peers to Herzog. You have to open up yourself to all, because the language of cinema is universal. It's like music or mathematics. Like you cannot. Everybody understand. That's why we can watch silent films, for God's sake. Made hundreds of years and made decades ago rather, and made in a different culture, in a different time, in a different location, and we can still feel because it's shorthand, right? So I think if we put more attention towards if the filmmakers put more attention towards that, I'm talking to myself too because like I said, I'm a screenwriter, more attention to making language more cinematic, more visual, more, I said audiovisual shorthand, but yeah, sound is also part of it. So more about distilling instead of like trying to always put everything out there instead of trying to always, do the most, like run the whole gamut of everything, just little by little by little by little. I'm sorry, Mike. I'm very scatterbrained right now. Sorry. I know I said that was last, but last thing, my favorite Nigerian movie. We don't even say my favorite Nigerian.
Oh, we have
New
lost
Nollywood.
you there, Jovi. Oh, all right.
Sorry.
I think okay. We lost you for a bit. You were talking about your favorite Nigerian movie.
Yeah, I said my favorite new Nollywood film is King of Boys 2018, and that's because for you can walk up to any the average Nigerian, at least someone that has seen the movie, and mention the name Eniola Salami, and they would at least know what you're talking about, or go, oh, because the as plot heavy as that film is, it's almost 3 hours long, almost the Godfather length. As plot heavy as that film is, the character at the center of it is so well defined. We do not even agree with everything she does. She's a villain, right? She got to the table by killing an Alaji and his family, like an Alaji's family, but basically, and then taking it while he was sick. So we do not have to agree with everything she does, but we understand where she's coming from. The first scene, she's shown outside, like smiling and all that, and the next scene, she's killing a guy in cold blood and asking her boys if they've eaten anything. And the next scene, she's being an altruist by giving somebody lace for free for her wedding. And in the next scene, we're doing a flashback showing how she was abused as a child and how that, you understand, like it's very, very, very character focused. Very character focused. Of course, the film has its flaws, but it's still my it's still so dear to my heart because that's how you can do a blockbuster. That's how you can do something that's mainstream Nollywood, right? Everybody's going to be talking about it, but still focus on characters, still focus on just trying to get us into the character's head. At her lowest point, we see her have visions of people that she's killed, or people that she's wronged, people that have died because of her, and the character is torn because of it. The reason that moment works is because of all the work that's been done to build up both her backstory and her actions in the present and all that. So it's I don't want to say it's not hard. Like I said, it's filmmaking is its own beast, but focusing more on visual shorthand, on character-driven stories, very, very layered characters. Very, very. That's my problem with the Black Book. The main character at the center, was very thinly sketched. So very complex and layered characters, visual shorthand. I don't know, explain everything. That kind of leave clues for the audience to piece together themselves. I think that would do us a lot of good going forward. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thanks, Joe. Thanks for writing the article on what kept me up. Which you can find is the first pinned tweet. All right, I'm just going to get some tweets out there that some people have posted. We start from pre-production, bad planning, one person, story developer, screenwriter, producer, director. If it's possible, you edit. No, thanks to me. And Shagan says, Nollywood is stuck on the spectacular stories are written about spectacular effects, equipment, and popular characters that will sell the film. That is where the money goes towards. Reminds me of Mrs. C saying bombastic elements. Daniel, actually, I pinned this. I put this up because I think it's a frank misunderstanding of what the issue is. Daniel says, does Hollywood have a singular identity? Is Korean cinema identity? Is Korean cinema identity not in several places? K-drama is vastly different to their pop films or their revenge thrillers. Even Bollywood has its quiet dramas and non-bombastic films. All right. Okay. So essentially what I said to I think this is a problem of what's wrong with having more than one identity, right? Is how it's been framed. I think that's not the correct framing. I just said problem isn't whether we have a single identity. Who cares if your identity leads you to make a good film? Great. Tarantino often does this actually from different types of cinema. However, it is obvious when you're doing a bad imitation of someone's work, and that's where the underlying problem is. I think somebody said, I can't remember who said this, but in the Black Book, there's a part where almost all of his lines
could be used as an example of this. But the guy who played Damilola, RMD's son, there's a point where he says Santa Claus, and it just sounded so off. It sounded like copied somebody else's work and did not change. You know, change some things. But yeah, that's sort of. I mean, like amongst other things, right? That's a very simple and this thing. And some people say, oh, some people in I mean, like especially if you want to portray where they were living, the kind of background he had. It's just like the person you're talking to, like even if you're very posh, like in your area you say Santa Claus kind of thing. When you're talking to your father, right? Like his age and all of those things. There's a way you change your what you say. But anyway, that's the smallest issue. I'm just trying to use that as an example of what an identity problem looks like. However, in saying all of this, is there anything Joe talked about being sympathetic with the Nollywood filmmakers, and I wanted us to shift slightly to is there an issue? Is there a point where we are more sympathetic to the filmmakers? I think one of the things that Joe mentions is in his article is, I think I can't remember how it's put it. People need to eat, I think, and people need to eat. On the surface, it sounds kind of it sounds somehow, but on a human level, there are genuinely a lot of people who basically are doing Nollywood, almost are able to put out all this mediocre content as almost like a 9-to-5, right? And it's keeping food on the tables of a lot of people. So is that if you don't empathize with that that this thing, is there anything else? Is there something else somebody can empathize with? Is there any other sort of issue, or is there any area somebody can empathize with? Mrs. C, you want to?
Yeah. So first off, I do agree with people need to eat. I do agree that people need to eat. People need to eat. It just is what it is. But yeah, I think much earlier on in the comments, I think Mildred quoted with Nollywood being representative of Nigeria. And I think that is somewhere else where I do sympathize with the filmmakers. It's as much as I don't have a lot of insider knowledge or background knowledge. I wonder if, because it's also a problem in Hollywood, right? Studio notes, right? And I wonder if a lot of filmmakers suffer from notes that are not suggestions, but are more, I'm paying for this, do this, right? I'm paying for this, cast this person. I'm paying for this, take this story in this whole other direction. I'm paying for this story is too slow. Give me something louder, give me something bigger, give me more boom. And I'm wondering how much of this, how much of these things that we're losing, right? In terms of story, character development, character-based stories, how much of this are we losing to the people with the purse strings? To, oh, this is not going to fly in Nigeria, to monopoly, right? Distributor monopolies that, are not letting some kind of films see the light of day or, have visibility, and then we are just stuck with what we have. So that Nigerianness in itself is, I do sympathize, because there is no way you can exist within Nigeria and not be touched by Nigerianness in that. So that is one of the ways that I would sympathize with Nollywood filmmakers.
Okay. Is there anyone else who has?
Sorry, can I talk? Okay, sorry.
Go on, wait, no, hang on. Wayne's Rand hasn't spoken in a while, and he did unmute first.
Okay, I was just going to say a couple of things. Okay, let me just go on to what we were talking about. I would like to assume, going on from what Mrs. C is saying, that the people that make films, like these filmmakers that we see out there are people like us. I think I'm a screenwriter. Um I mean, kind of. And then a lot of people here have been saying stuff like, oh, I'm also a screenwriter. I'm also into film. And I think at some point, the rest of us are going to make films. And these guys that are making films now, mainstream films now, they probably were like us years back. I think there has to be something. It seems as though Nollywood has a template, right? 3 stars from BB Niger, two Instagram influencers, 1 or 2 guys from old Nollywood. There's a template for movies that work. And I feel like um, there has to be some constraints in the industry or in how Nigeria is run that make people have to do that. One of the examples is I had not seen Eimofe for a long time. I saw Eimofe like I think last month, and I watched it, and my head was like, how have I never seen this film? And if that film, I may mention some names here that will hurt some feelings, but if that film had Brother Shaggy, had Nancy Sime, had all of these guys, that would have been all over my timeline, it would have been all over my Instagram, and I would have had to have known about that film somehow. So there has to be something in the way the industry is structured, the way Nigeria is structured, that if we're also being honest with ourselves, makes people have to make bad films. Because one of the reasons why I wrote why our films are bad is it seems as though right now we're just casting people that will sell the films. Nobody even really cares about whether this is a good actor, whether this person can play this role. We're just casting people that we know, okay, this person is going to sell tickets. I made a list of the top 20 grossing Nigerian films, and I think maybe 18 of them are ensemble films. They have like 15 16 big stars. And when we talk about films, we always complain about the fact that these guys just throwing stars into the film. They're just throwing random people into the film, but it works, right? And so people have been probably trying to make films without putting all of these stars, and it isn't working. So I would share the sentiment that Mrs. C is sharing, that there are things in the industry that we can't see. We're not in the industry. I checked people that are listening. There are actors here. There are filmmakers here. So these guys probably know these things. There are things in the industry that make people have to make these bad films. So yeah, I share that sentiment.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, can I say something?
Okay.
Let me say. I think there's a queue I'm trying to go with. All right, Shagun, do you want to go, and then Vanessa next?
Okay, to add to what the last speaker said, I mean, he has hit the nail on the head. Most of our films that seem to work are ensemble films. But now my own grouse is with the fact that the process in itself is where I have a problem with, because we are talking about whether the films are good or whether they are bad. So, but as far as the tenets of what filmmaking is about, movies and cinema is an experience. So if I sit in the cinema and I'm watching, and this is how crazy it is, if you are watching people arguing in a room by yourself, somebody's on the left, somebody's on the right, you know what that feels like. There's a dog barking outside on the extreme right, outside the window. You are hearing that. You are probably hearing the generator from the next compound. But all that, you are experiencing all that, and that is the way it's supposed to be translated into film. But what we have, and that's why I always complain about audio. What we have, especially in Nollywood, and somebody said this. I've been on tables where people talk about, yeah, don't worry, we'll clean it in post and we do this. Just basic, simple. What we have is when you sit in the cinema watching a Nigerian film, all the audio is in the center, in the front of your face. Whereas when you are mixing stuff for film, you are throwing, if the conversation is happening on two ends of the room, there's a way you pan the voice this way, pan the voice that way. Even your ambient sound, depending on where the sound is coming from, there's a way you will edit and pan this audio so that the person sitting watching this film, who already knows what everything sounds like if he was listening to a conversation in a normal room, is watching a film, but everything is just in the center. The music is in the center, everything is just there. That now takes away the experience. So that is what I have a problem with. And it's as though it's a different case if we don't know this. but we know it. But now, and that's which brings me to the problem now. I think we have, I don't want to say we have a directing problem. I think we have a I won't call it so that it's not like I'm calling out directors or rubbishing directors' efforts. The directing team in themselves, which aside the story writing and screenplay, the directing team is having an issue balancing what the, like the last speaker said, what the template is about and what actual filmmaking is. Why will we go through the stress of following the proper process of filmmaking when what we are doing is selling? If we do this, there's no point. Once we record the audio on set, as long as you can hide the cameras properly and hide the microphones properly, we record the audio. This person says you can clean the noise. Once they clean the noise, we have a film. And that is what I've heard in almost a lot of the major films. This is what it's a problem for me. And it's okay when they're on streaming services because most likely somebody's watching it on his laptop or watching it on the TV. I don't know, maybe a handful of people have 5.1 surround sound set up in their living rooms. So those people might notice the audio issues. But I think we spend more time and effort on the spectacular. So this story, okay, we need to blow up this. We need to do this. All that is already calculated before even looking at whether this story, we can do it in a way to avoid spending 10 million naira on this car crash rather than just show a flashing light coming towards the person and give the sound of broken glass. And then in the next shot, you show somebody in a neck cast, ambulance carrying the person away. That you probably will spend 500K on that, but we need to spend 10 million naira and we need to show this car crash. And the thing struck me the most when I saw the reviews on Creator. I saw one of the behind the scenes of the movie Creator where Gareth was carrying a gimbal with the camera shooting the beach scene where the soldiers, like 8 or 9 guys, landed the beach in the water. There was no lighting, nothing. He used a camera that had high ISO, yes. But the thing struck me because it was just a crew of 4 people. And there were no extras. So the people you see in the background were people that were on the beach at night, regular people. And that was shot that way. Juxtapose that on a Nollywood set, because I've been on 2 or 3 Nollywood sets where at night they want to shoot a night scene which did not take up to 5-10 minutes of the film, did not even feature up to 5 minutes. Then I'm seeing 2 rigs, I'm seeing 2 trucks that have 50 kVA generators. I'm seeing massive lights. I'm seeing dolly and track. I'm seeing a crane with the jib and everything. I'm seeing a whole crane setup and almost about 100 people on set to shoot that. And I'm like, so that is where everything starts to cascade downwards. So I think we need to be true to ourselves. We need to be truthful and say, look, we need to write. And then my final point is that has also affected our actors. And the truth is our actors are not acting properly. Maybe because they're not being directed properly or because technical...
Sorry. I do have stuff. Like I'm yes, we have labeled the other ways in which Nollywood can be bad. I'm trying to see if there's a conversation worth having, whether there's a place where we can be more charitable or where we can be more sympathetic and understanding.
That's exactly what I want to talk about.
That's where I'm getting to. I'm saying,
Shagun, okay. How can you say that's where you're getting to? You spent the last 2 minutes talking about how comparing Hollywood this thing.
Yeah, I know. I just give that. I cited that as an example because you're saying we should be charitable when we need to hold somebody accountable to it. Because every time we criticize films, it seems like we are rubbishing people's work. The guy who brought equipment, the guy who is lighting, the guy, and that's what it is. So I'm saying, who are we holding accountable for this if we're going to be charitable towards the filmmakers in itself?
Okay.
Unless I'm not.
So like, well, okay, all right. Anyway, the way that in this particular section, right? So what we're saying is whether is there any area where we're like, you know what, I guess here because of this is why I get it why Nollywood movies are perceived this way. So like we will start with what
where we're going, and then we can give our examples so that we can be with you from the beginning and dive into this thing. Anyway, but understood. Vanessa, do you want to?
Yeah, hi. So, while I agree with a lot of the people have to eat, whose speakers on? Can someone, there's laggy, please, could you mute yourself? Okay, yeah. While I agree with a lot of the people who have to eat sentiments, I would just like to say I would like to be empathized with as well. I'm sorry. While I while I empathize with this situation that is Nigeria and how Nigeria happens to all of us, I would like to be empathized with as well. I think the audience would like to be empathized with as well. Empathize with me, sympathize for me, all the things. Feel pity for me that I'm watching your film. This is my thing, right? I feel like a lot of current Nollywood filmmakers don't watch Nollywood. They don't watch Nigerian films, never have, never cared to. So they don't think about what we audience, where we they watch them. Mind you, this isn't, and this is, I think this is the point of view that Shegun's coming from about like how it seems like we're constantly bashing Nollywood. And I think I've seen a number of comments somewhere being like, can we talk about what we like instead of what we don't like? But the truth is, I think I can speak for a vast majority of the people who are on Film Club every week. I don't mean like general audience. I mean people who come to Film Club, watch these films every single week and come and talk about these films. We are probably some of the most actively engaged audience that Nollywood has. And we're not just watching the films that are on streaming. Say for the people who are in Film Club who still live in Nigeria. Some people take their monies and go to the cinemas and watch these films. And so while we sympathize with people must eat, sympathize with the fact that the people that are enabling you to eat also want to watch good films. Sympathize with me. I want you to eat, which is why I'm paying money for streaming services and watching your films, and paying money and going to the cinemas and watching your films, and talking about your films on social media so that more people can watch your films. Whether or not I like it is a whole different. But have pity on me, sympathize with me, make films that make me want to watch more so that you can eat more. Do you get me? Because I'm sorry, it gets to a point where it feels like it is a personal affront. And maybe I'm centering myself and I'm making myself the main character. But it begins to feel like a personal affront when I'm constantly faced with a barrage of bad films. And 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 contrary to what people might say, this isn't subjectively bad, it's objectively bad on many on many grounds, from storytelling to all the things. Have sympathy for me. And I don't think the Nigerian filmmakers and audience actually have sympathy for the audience, for the people that are watching these films. I think because people must eat, they just make films. And maybe I'm ascribing to them intentions that are not theirs. And I apologize if that is the case. But it genuinely just feels like I've heard people say a particular filmmaker who at this point has me blocked on Twitter. What's up?
How they
Has
block you?
who has been blocked on Twitter has said film doesn't change lives, film isn't that serious of a thing, and people are just doing it for doing sakes. And if that is one of the filmmakers who apparently wants to change the world and become Walt Disney, saying that film doesn't change lives, and film doesn't have the ability to do all these magical things that film does, and all he's doing it for is for the money, How am I supposed to sympathize with you, my brother? I can't sympathize with you because if you cannot sympathize with me and have pity for me and actually care enough about the audience, and it's not just me, I'm not just saying me as a person, but like just as a general, I'm using me as the example for the audience. If you do not care enough, and I think that's what's missing. I mean, there's a lot of things missing, but I think there's an aspect of care. There's an aspect of care that's missing in how our stories are told. Care for the craft itself, care for the audience. A lot of care is missing. So, devil's advocate, I'm not really sympathizing because nobody is sympathizing with me. Sympathize with me, sympathize with your audience, then maybe I can reciprocate that sympathy. Please.
All right. Actually, fair. That's a fair challenge to the question. Does it feel? I don't know. Like I think there's a balancing act with, something can be bad and somebody put all their effort and try to do all the care there, and they're just not fit to make all of this. And it really is sometimes like that's why I mean like emotions when especially when we're in film club discussing whatever topic, because like sometimes we do get into it, but like at the end of the day, I don't wish anybody um I don't wish anybody ill. I hope you make all of the money with all of your bad films, make all of the names and all of the noise, break box office, top the charts. I generally good because like it's like another person doing well, that is always good, especially in Nigeria and especially on a global stage. It's like, but like when I'm talking about the films and like in terms of your films or your TV shows and what they have done structurally, whether there are issues, I think sometimes I can't help it. Emotions we get like because like sometimes it's like we're almost there, and sometimes it's so simple that they should have. It just feels like your attention was somewhere else, and that's the thing. Like but like all of these things exist. Kings. I'm coming to Benjamin Kings. Is there a part where you empathize with Nollywood filmmakers, or is there something you have to say about that?
I empathize with Nollywood filmmakers. Hello. Okay. Hi, everyone. It's amazing being a part of this space. So something I just want to say is yes, like quite honestly, we can confirm that Nigerian films could really, really use some work. But I mean, like when we really think it through, we really are trying. Like we really, really are doing our best. And what I feel though that might be the problem is process. And now what do I mean? So let's say we have a really, really good film script and the director has a very brilliant vision, okay? But along the way, shooting a film and doing all of those things, I feel like I really don't know. It's probably a creative blocks thing or something. Okay, but I think that it gets to a point where okay, we have our the vision we had, for our film projects and everything. It's been well executed and everything, but at some point, you're looking back at the work and you are doubting whether it really is good enough. You're starting to question, oh, should I put this scene first or should I, like, insert more exposition here? Like, did the audience really, really get it? And I'm saying this from experience because I recently worked on a script with a friend of mine, a short film, and we had the brilliant idea set up and everything, and the movie was shot and everything. And at some point, he reached out to me like 4 months after, while the movie was still in post production, and he was asking, okay, so what do I think about inserting this heavy exposition at the beginning, having like a description scrolling down at the screen for just to give audience members insight into what the film really is about and everything. And I just like, guys, see, this things like this need the audience members are going to get it. We don't have to spoon feed our audiences everything. Now, why did I digress? Because I feel like I'm a creative myself and I hope to be a filmmaker someday. And I just feel like there is a pressure, that comes when you're working on a film project. I think it's a sort of distortion because you're so close to the project. You've worked on it for so long. So you have a hard time, being objective or you cannot, I don't know how to put it. It just kind of skews the way you view the film because you're so close to it. You cannot digest it as an audience member. And that's why I feel like we need to, put processes in place Nigerian filmmakers are really doing good. I recently saw The Black Book, and I think it's a brilliant picture. Yes, some parts didn't quite hit home. There were like some themes that were hinted at the beginning, but they weren't entirely covered and everything. You get, but still, I think it's just a testament to what Nigerian filmmakers can really do. So yeah, that's my take on it. Really, I think Nigerians are really doing good films. We have so much to work on, yes, but we're really getting there. We just need more process, to put in place so as to ensure that yeah, like it's the director's vision, doesn't get skewed. And yeah, that's my take on it pretty much. Thanks, guys.
All right. No, thank you. Good to get another creative's take. Okay. Ichene, was there something you wanted to say?
Yes, I want to say that I am very, very sympathetic to the filmmakers because, one of the problems that has persisted in the Nigerian movie industry, Nollywood, forever, is how to make money from it, and that's one of the big problems. You see, Nigeria is one of the most populous countries, is the most populous country in Africa, and it is also very culturally influential beyond Africa. So not only do we have tons of Nigerians watching these movies, you have people in other African countries. I mean, if you look at the movies on YouTube, for example, you see like the movies of Ruth Kadri. Look at the views that those things get. I mean, she gets like 5 million views in 2 weeks. And then you look at these movies in the cinemas that are making like 50 million naira in 2 months, which means that in 2 months, I think 10,000 people saw it. And millions of people are watching these things on YouTube, and yet you can't make money from it. So it really makes it hard to invest. It makes it hard to invest enough money in these movies when you're not sure how you're going to make a profit from it. And that affects the writing. As much as I say that the writing is problematic right from the beginning in terms of structure and the like, there are also things that happen in production that people don't really think about. Like, you watch a movie sometimes and you see certain directions that the plot takes that don't make a lot of sense to you, and you start cursing the writers, but it's not always the writer. Sometimes it made sense on the page, but there's a difference from when it gets to the page to it gets to the stage. Sometimes you write things a certain way, but when it's time for production, you can't get the location you wanted, you can't get the props you wanted, you don't have the time to shoot the way you wanted, and on the spot you just have to make up some other alternate situation, some other alternate plot situation, and throw it in there just to get the film made. And then that's why things come out looking the way they do. And I mean, money is always a consideration because this industry is a commercial industry. It's very different from the film scenes in the francophone countries, where they came up as an art scene and they came up talking about all the Kurosawa movies they watched and all the Rainier, Werner, Fassbinder, and the Orson Welles that they watched. Nigerian movies was never like that. I mean, there's this creation myth about.
Sorry, Ichene, can I ask a question? Because this is something. Whilst I do sympathize with it,
Mhm.
but is there any different from any other Nigerian worker in any other industry? And not to say a lot of our industries don't have issues, but a lot of Nigeria is happening to everyone in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And
That's a point. That's a
is
point I
there a
want to make.
special plea for Nigerian filmmakers though, in terms of
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna bring it back to that. Yeah, but what I want to say is that when it comes to living in bondage, for example, one of the creation myths around living in bondage, it might be apocryphal, I'm not sure, is that when the guy who produced Living in Bondage made that movie, he didn't make that movie because he wanted to make a movie, that he was driven by some great artistic impulse to express himself cinematically. He was an electronic salesman who had a bunch of videotapes he wanted to sell, and he thought he could sell the tapes faster if he put a movie on them. So his product was actually the videotape. It wasn't the movie itself. And that's why even when you look at the golden age of Nollywood, as we call it now, you see that the movies were all produced by Andy O Electronics and whatnot. These guys just cared about selling the VCD. They didn't care about what was on the movie per se. And they understood that when Mercy Johnson and Jim Ike and Genevieve's face was on the cover of the movie, it sold faster. So that was their major concern. And that's why, when we talk about how we just throw stars into things, it's just that same mentality that's continuing from then. Now, what you said about Nigeria happening, I think the problem is not that you see, there's this syndrome that I've always called the "na management we did so" syndrome. And that is, as Nigerians, we're always taught to manage things. We're always taught that, rather than solving problems, we have to find ways to manage them. Now, just last week, we celebrated 63 years of independence. And when you think about it, it's kind of crazy that a country that has been independent for 63 years cannot provide 24 hours of steady electricity to its people. And if this had happened in any other country in the West, let's say, if people had to go for 4 days without electricity, there would be riots in the street. People would overthrow the government and they would fix that electricity. But in Nigeria, we're taught that, you're not supposed to fix the problem. You're just supposed to find a way to manage it. You buy a generator. You find a way to deal with the problem rather than fixing it. And that's the mentality has always been in Nigeria, in Nollywood. In Nollywood, it's always been this idea of just leave it like that. It's not as if people don't know the problems, but they'll be like, just leave it. The audience will just manage. They have to manage it, And the problem is that we accept it. I think if it gets to the point where people start rejecting it and saying we're not going to manage it, you're going to have to force people to make these changes. But the thing is, that goes against our essential nature as Nigerians. And then the other problem is, like many people have already said, this idea, this obsession with doing spectacular things. Like everybody thinks it's the camera that's going to make your movie better. Everybody wants to shoot with the Arri Alexa. Everybody wants to take the cast and shoot in Dubai and Beirut and London while ignoring the most basic problems. And that, again, is just our Nigerian thing, Like you always hear these stories about how Nigeria wants to get nuclear weapons and Nigeria wants to launch a satellite. And you say, wait a minute, why are we doing these things when we don't even have electricity? And it's just the same thing in Nollywood. People ignore the basic things because they feel the audience has learned to manage these things. And they ignore those basic things and instead just try to go for the bigger goals. And I don't know what the answer to that is, because I think it's just an essential part of the Nigerian psychology to look at things in that way.
All right. Right. Okay.
I just want to pick up on what he said. Indeed, you talked about like the Francophone countries, the West African Francophone countries. Indeed, they made their movies for her. I just want to point out something there. See, Nigeria's Nollywood is a very good example of something that Nollywood was created completely by Nigeria, and we don't have to wait for French people to give us money to make our movies. And we make our own entire industry. We have our own stars. We're basically like kind of like Hollywood, but Hollywood is older, and Bollywood too. You don't see Hollywood movies don't make that much. They make money in India, but they don't make that much money in India because Indians are not concerned that much with Bollywood people. They're more concerned with their own Indian films and their own something. So they don't need the praise of like Hollywood to say whether their movies are okay or not. And that's the same thing about Nollywood too. Yes, those Francophone countries made art movies, but we're forgetting one very good thing. They literally, how many people has watched Black Girl? How many people? How many, even if you're talking about the African diaspora, the African diaspora don't know that the movie Black Girl exists. But they know Beyonce and Rihanna. That's the one thing about like Nollywood. Yes, it's right that those movies are hard, but those movies, the funding of those movies very much require an understanding from the French, the white something, to definitely give them movies, to be making those heartful movies for who? Most of the Francophone countries, people too, are probably also not seen it. And they mostly watching Nollywood movies. So yes, it's made of heart. It's just a little tiny pushback. You're right. A little tiny something to just say there are pros and cons to each one of those things. And let's also not lie. One of the reasons why that is happening in the French francophone countries is that the francophone countries are not really like when the independence happened. It didn't really happen. France still control the money. France still control a lot of things. And one good thing about the British is that they mostly left. They mostly left. So, with that said, yes, they have very artistic movies, but it's just also that few people have ever seen it, and their funding source for them to even be able to make movies and tell their own story, they have to go to France to ask for money. Nigeria doesn't have to do that. We make our own movies. In fact, we are the Nollywood is the third, which in terms of money of movies of a film industry that make money, we're third. So just a little thing of like, it's not all bad. There are good things there. And it means that we're more in control of it. But also, to be able to make those good technical movies, I think I already said that, we need electricity. One of the things that is really affecting the industries and all industries around in Nigeria is that Nigeria is not that of an industrial nation. You can compare it to India. India has some of the same issues. They are like most Bollywood films. The sound that you're hearing is mostly ADR. They're just like Nigeria. It's very noisy. They don't necessarily have electricity all the time. But India and Nigeria are two different places. India is more industrious. It has more industries. It has more electricity, especially in the cities where Bollywood is made. And all those places, Bollywood is only for like Hindi language something. And all other parts of the Indian something, the Indian government actually has invested in industrial areas in India. And that thing helps the Indian industries because to make those type of movies requires a lot of technology, and a lot of technology requires a lot of electricity. It's not, and Nigeria might not have the power to do that right now. So that's a structural problem that no matter how long we're talking, if our government, if things in wider political something does not fix that structural problem, we're not going to have a movie like Blonde. Technically, the technical makeness of the Blonde, or even Korean industries. Like the reason why you see that change within 10 years, Korea's government really, really, really invested in its cultural exports. Like it's a literal investment, like it's literal political investment. So that's also a big structural issue that I want to point out that also affects Nollywood.
All right. Okay. So I think we've spoken. I think we've spoken a lot about what our issues with Nollywood is. We've actually even debated if Nollywood movies are bad-ish. I think there's a general consensus on that. We've tried to empathize with the filmmakers where it is. Are there any things that you think? I'm not asking anybody to provide solution of how to fix Nollywood, but are there any easier things you think Nollywood could obviously do better? All right, if we did this, I think we would fix X issues.
All right.
Think it's Binay, yeah, sure, go on.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's good to be here again. Interesting subject. Very, very timely subject of discourse. I think the challenges are very much broad-based. I mean, we've discussed a lot of them, but I'm just going to go forward a little bit. Norimitsu Onishi is a Japanese editor in the New York Times who actually named Nollywood. 2002, he's here observing some filmmaking practices, and from nothing would. That was pretty much how he coined it. Nollywood comes from nothing, and nothing would. And the name Nollywood is birthed. And it's likened to a heart surgeon conducting surgery with fork and knives, and somehow the patient survives. That is a metaphor. That is an example of exactly what this industry is. Now, the way I see it is interlopers who operate a cheese factory where they put in milk on one end and get that cheese at the other end. Whatever happens in the middle, they don't care. Now, a lot of people, we've talked about empathy for people who are doing this as a means to an end. Because I tell you what, when you do something that is a means to an end, there's an absolute lack of care for the process because you're only interested in the results. Then it becomes an economic practice. Now, I think the greatest challenge is, because, I mean, forums like this, if you look at this entire gamut, there are people who, let me liken it to music. There's some people who see this as a means to become something larger than life, bigger. I want to blow. So whatever is going to get me from A to B is music. Let me jump into music. Same thing happens in this industry. Some people who see it as, okay, I have a name to make. I want to do something big. Let me get into film, that kind of thing. Then you have people, on the other hand, who are really, really after the craft. They go out of their way to learn it, to understand it. They're outliers. They want to be in global conversations about cinema language, and how they can create new movements, few and far between. Now, I think that there is a dearth of education around what this art form is really about. And the truth about it is that here's the thing, once you don't have an idea of what it is that you're doing, because if you look at our films, you see there's a lot of technical deficiencies. And I don't mean cameras and, camera setups and lights and sound. I'm talking about the most vital ingredient of a film, the story. When you lack the technical abilities to craft a well-written, well-rounded script, there is no director who can save that script. And it doesn't really matter if you're shooting with 10 Alexas or 10 Reds or you're using 8K, whatever it is, you're doing your post on the moon, it doesn't matter. When you don't get the technicalities right, and there needs to be some level. So education is a big thing. And it necessarily doesn't have to be going to the most expensive film schools or going. There is the University of YouTube. Learning basic things. I mean, like Shagun talks about, I mean, we have these conversations every day. There is literally nothing that you want to learn about that is not at your fingertips. But I don't understand why people do not go out of the way to educate themselves about film language. What exactly it is that you're doing? Why is it that you do the first act, the second act, then when you get to that when everything is all come, then it all falls flat. Technical deficiencies that can only be corrected by education. And at the end of the day, it cuts across, and it's not just around one thing. I feel that, our industry is filled up with a lot of filmmakers and very few artists. And that is why the films that start to make sense, that start to draw the attention, we start to talk about and see in that light. We've talked about films like Eyumo Fair, we've seen films like Mami Water. When artists begin to do work, there is a marked difference, as opposed to people who are only here for, and the thing is, there must be a fine balance, because at the end of the day, this is something that is a means to an end, so people must survive at the end of the day. But then again, it's really about your output, because at the end of the day, I know that people think that they have an audience quota, but then at the end of the day, people need to see their films as products. Nobody goes to the market, to the supermarket, to the market to buy a bad product. If you order something on Jumia and it's bad and it has a defect, you return it. So anytime I engage, because I'm in the industry, I have produced films, I've executed produce, so I understand the challenges. But I tell producers that, look, you need to see your film as a product. And there's product engineering, and there's a way to see a product from when it is conceived to when it's actually produced. When you have that mindset, everything has to be excellent, from when it is crafted, from when you are doing your pre-production to your post-production and all production all the way to your post. There has to be an understanding of the fact that everything you do must come together to make one cohesive. Because once one part is bad, it affects the entire thing. So I think for me, a lot of filmmakers need to immerse themselves in learning and understanding what it is that they're doing. I'm going to end like this. I was reading an article around the anniversary of The Exorcist. And, I was listening to what Vanessa was saying about the filmmaker talking about the fact that it doesn't change anything. When The Exorcist came out in 1978 or so, people were collapsing in movie theaters. It completely changed an entire generation of how people perceive horror films, and it influenced a generation of horror filmmakers. That is how powerful film can be. That is how powerful this medium can be. You understand what I'm saying? So I think that a lot of education is important from the standpoint of understanding the fact that it's a language. It's an art form. You cannot fully, and whatever it is that you want to do, that kind of. I think if people can move from shooting with 8-bit cameras to shooting with 10-bit cameras, and they do really bad stuff, they can also learn the art of trying to fine tune and to better the craft of storytelling. So education. It changes the paradigm. There's a paradigm shift that happens when you truly understand what it is that you are doing. It completely changes the landscape. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Obin. We're going to hear from King's daughter, and King's daughter. We're in our solutions issue, or
Okay.
anything you think. Well, not necessarily. Again, I'm saying I'm not asking anybody to solve Nollywood's issues. It's just like, do you think there's a particular thing Nollywood can do to that would immediately make things better?
I'm not sure I know what they can do, right? We've all identified story as a problem. But one thing I think they need to start to do, and it's first a mentality problem, is respect the audience, like respect the people that they create this film for. We've come on Twitter and seen filmmakers make very careless statements, and it adds up that they make those kind of films when they make statements like that, right? There just needs to be some sort of respect for the audience, because if I am going to pay money, because sorry to drag us back, but we talked about they need to make money, and do we empathize with them? I want to empathize with them, but they're not the ones paying ticket fees, which are consistently on the rise, by the way. For us, paying subscription fees, we are going to invest all of that. It's only right that we get value for it. So if they are going to do better, then they need to just some sort of respect for what the audience wants and what they produce. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, King's daughter. All right. I think Vanessa, you had your hand up first.
Sure. I guess I can't speak on all the multitude of issues, but I guess my one issue, and I think it's of recent, and it's become more apparent more, and I'm going to offer solution because we're in the solution section, but it's the Hollywoodification of Nollywood. And let me not choke. And the reason why it's such a big problem is that Nollywood filmmakers are refusing to acknowledge that it is a problem. They are outrightly lying to our faces that they are not borrowing tropes from Hollywood, that they are not making poor imitations of already well done Hollywood films and tropes. And that in itself is offensive. And it is only doing the industry a disservice, because the audience deserves to feel represented on screen. And it's not just in the kind of people that we see on screen, but more so in the kind of stories that are told. And I've heard some of the most ridiculous excuses about what is a Nigerian story. What is a Nigerian story? A Nigerian story is a story. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go into what a Nigerian story is. However, the baseline of what a Nigerian story is that the audience that is Nigerian actually feels like this is a story that is them. Case in point, Santa Claus in the Black Book. I feel like we haven't given the Black Book its lashings enough, um, because this is a film with such a large budget, and in what resulted in the most egregious mishmash of many Hollywood tropes. And then the filmmakers had the effrontery to come and tell us, no, we were inspired by Nigerian stories. Sir, we have eyes and we can see. when stories do not feel Nigerian, when characters do not feel Nigerian, when characters do not feel like people that we know every day, people that we speak to every day, people that we see every day, people that we grew up with. Case in point, somebody referring to something as, oh, who is Jesus Christ? Santa Claus, sir. You couldn't even say Father Christmas. You couldn't say the little baby that Mary, Holy Mary carries in her arms. Like these are word pictures that feel more Nigerian than Santa Claus does. Do you get what I mean? Um, it's in the insistence on certain things like a car chase or a shootout at the top of a bridge. These things don't feel Nigerian. And even when you're borrowing things from an entirely different industry, because everyone is allowed to make a mishmash posh of whatever they want to make, you have to still leave in those threads that make the stories feel grounded in the Nigerian reality. And 90% of the time, the Nigerian reality is an afterthought for our filmmakers. But then again, it begs to ask the question, are Nigerian filmmakers making films for Nigerians? Because there's a lot of focus right now on exportation. And while that is in many ways a good thing, more eyes on our work, it feels like they are sacrificing pleasing the audience that has been with you from 19 Boboro for the sake of exportation. So are you trying to serve an audience that already has an established industry and established film language by regurgitating poor imitations of stuff that they've already seen? So who exactly are these films for? I feel like that's the question that Nigerian filmmakers have to ask. If that's going to solve anything, is ask, who are you making these films for? And what do you want these people that you're making these films for? What do you want them to feel? Do you want them to feel like they're being seen and they're being portrayed on screen and that they can relate to the stories and the characters that are being put on the big screen? Or do you want them to feel alienated by the stories that you tell? Question.
It's just what it's just wild. Black Americans will be begging for representation in Hollywood. Nigerians, man, will be
We'll be
begging
begging for
for
representation in Nollywood. See us. See us.
Mm. All right. Please. I know you had your hand up. I believe. Is that how you know you say the name? I don't know. Joshua Soso. All right. Okay. Elizabeth, do you want to? You have your hand up, Elizabeth.
Yes. Yes, I'm here actually. Running some errands. All right. So what I'm going to say for solution, personally, I think Vanessa has said a lot of things that I wanted to say about, having the Nigerian identity. And everybody has talked about Imofe, looking at Imofe is a Nigerian reality that probably borrowed visual language from the Asian cinema, right? But you're not confused as to what you're watching, right? And it's only those who are familiar with visual languages that can pick out this, oh, I can see this, I've seen this before somewhere, right? And then look at King of Boys. I really like King of Boys because it's a Godfather-esque take on the Nigerian reality. Again, you're not confused, you're not lost. Of course, we might disagree on the acting or the yelling and whatnot, but that's a very tight story. You're not confused, internal conflict is there, character development is there, even the moral angle, right? Like even Eniola Salami, as much as we love this our villain, she had her comeuppance. She lost her 2 children. She even thought she was going to lose her life, and she was ready for that. And by the time we saw that she escaped, we were happy for her. And it was not just that she escaped on a whim. It was because there is this other policeman who has been following the thing and found out that the Nigerian whatever too is corrupt, whatever. The point is, these are the things that the audience wants to see, right? We are happy that Eniola Salami left, but at the same time, the film is making moral justifications in a way that a bunch of the films we've been seeing recently have not done so. Like a lot of resolutions are not earned. Talk about brotherhood. I will never agree with the resolution. It was not earned. And again, this is steeped in story writing. So solution for me is, as Vanessa said, rather than borrow tropes, having a mishmash potpourri of tropes, how about try to see logically from point A to point B how you can develop something and still steep it in the Nigerian reality in such a way where your audience is satisfied at the end of the day. It's not enough to say, but people are watching it. Of course, people are watching it. You have a C plus, doesn't mean it's an A plus. Of course, you get applauded either ways. But the point is, if you can get better, why are you not trying your hands at getting better? That's one. Two, I think also for the younger filmmakers, I'm not saying that older filmmakers are hopeless. I hope not. But for younger filmmakers, I think also that it will help if a lot of them read, and I mean it's literature, because in literature, you can transpose themes. There are themes that you can use over and over again. I'll mention Bjorn Stevens' Braided Life. I like it a lot because it used a trope, often in literature, that is often used in literature. Some films also use it. That is in which she used coma. In the coma, our protagonist had his entire character development within a coma, because it is understandable that the character development would like to see happened over the years, but she does not have that time in reality to put it into film. So have it happen in a coma, which is a dream world, which happens in a lot of, there are a bunch of films and literature that uses this trope. Again, you can borrow tropes in such a way where by the time you're transposing into the Nigerian reality, it's steeped into it. It is merged in such a fluid way that it's not jarring and you're not taken out of the story and pushed back in because it looks like a mismatch. Another mismatch I'll talk about from a young filmmaker. I'm sorry that I'm mentioning people's name, but I feel like we need to make examples so that we can see. I really want to like the film Hey You, but Hey You is something in which I like the visuals, but the story falls apart so much that it feels like it also had a potpourri of borrowing tropes up and down. So, and this is also because before making films, we're looking at people trying to impress the audience, which again, I think is very particular to that sector, should I call it sector of filmmaking, me, Akimolayan kind of filmmaking. That is for my own understanding and inference. I think that you're making film in such a way that you want to give the audience spectacle and you forget that story is king. People like to argue that story is not king. Story is not king. Of course, story is king. Look at Marvel now. There's some form of, like elasticity thing going on. Everybody has gotten to their limits of all the things that they can show us. Everybody wants new stories. We are bored, we're tired. When you mention how there's nothing big deal in Barbie, the meta comedy, she's probably right. But you know what makes it fantastic? It's the visual world. And that's the thing about filmmaking. If you think your stories, you take it, you turn a story as simple as that, you make it into something that is a visual experience, people will buy it. That's the point. That's the entire thing. That's the way you elevate cinema, right? And this is what separates cinema from theater, where you can explain every day. In theater, you're expected to explain things, but in film, you can just use the visual language. So I think that more young filmmakers should read a lot, read other tropes. Like, it's not every time you have to borrow a trope. What was that trope in Blood Sisters? Running through the kitchen. That is such an American trope. Like, I see it, I know already that it's an American trope. Again, as Vanessa mentioned, this is something you're exporting to an audience that's seen it before. If an audience is interested in your stories because they've not seen it the way you have chosen to do it. Look at Old Boy. There are a lot of revenge films, right? But this is how they have chosen to replicate this story. A bunch of themes that can be used over and over and over again. You can talk about boy meets girl. It's the way you decide to show boy meets girl that makes it different. And that is how your audience can, you can even have more audience. Let me use that word. It's not that, oh, I already have my audience, I'm good, I'm Gucci. Fine, fantastic. What is wrong with expanding your audience? Don't you want to expand the people that want to watch you? That is what you should be looking at. And I don't have a problem with, you want to make film for money. It's fine. I'm sure I'm doing my job because I like money. That's it. But at the same time, I want to excel at it because excellence means that I'll get a promotion, I'll get better pay, I can move around. But so I'm not just saying, okay, money is the reason I'm here. It's also, I need to get better so that I can get better opportunities. So I think this is the way we can keep pushing the industry. Content is king, and story is king, no matter what anybody tells us. It's fine if you're just building your film language and you've not really, learned it. It's fine. You have years and years to improve. And so you can have your own identity. It's like people saying, you know Tunde Kelani's identity. At this point, Jadi's identity. When you see Jadi's film, you know that she's going for the spectacle. Do you get? And you can talk about other people's identity. Like Tadio Gidon, I feel like Tadio Gidon's identity is a death and a police chase. In almost all his films, you have to see it there. Again, you can define what you want to show as who you are as a filmmaker. And lastly, there has to be synergy between writing and directing. There has to be some form of synergy. I know people say it a lot like, oh, this is not what I wrote that I saw on the screen. Fine and fantastic. I probably also believe you. But at the same time, before we put all of this on the director, how about you look at your script the more? And I feel like there is nothing wrong in asking people in literature to help you review your script. You may not agree, but I'm telling you, there is nothing wrong. Let them help you look at your script. The people in literature, they understand more tropes. There are more themes and tropes that are in the literature world that, it's just a bit of it that is in film. Let them help you structure properly. And then when you have done your work, then we cannot hang the rest on the director's neck. And for our directors, you cannot continue to direct in prose. This is not a book. It's not a stage play. You have to understand film language. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. All right. We're going to start rounding up in a bit, but I know some people have had their hands up, so we just take King's and Wayne's rants.
All right. Hi, everyone. So,
Hi.
interesting take from Obina, Vanessa, and Elizabeth. So picking back from what Elizabeth just said about, introducing our scripts to literature people, I don't recommend it. I mean, yeah, that's your opinion, and I'm sure you stand by it. But we need to understand that first, the film medium is different. It's not like writing a novel. It's a different medium. So the things you would expect. I don't know. I feel like you want a really good film script, okay, then you should talk to people who write really good film scripts. That's the end of it. Now, on what Nigerian directors can do or what Nigerian filmmakers can do, I feel like first we need to really learn to identify a really good story. Like we need to know how to identify a story that is really good, or at least create one, and also to learn how to properly translate the story, that is the script, into a visual medium, because there is tons of ideas, brilliant ideas that we have, but that that gap where the script meets the camera is one part of filmmaking that is a bit elusive. Why? Because I don't know, it's not something I can really explain, but we need to work on that. Now, on the Hollywoodification of Nollywood, which Vanessa talked about earlier. Well, I mean, I really get Vanessa's point. I really do. But at the same time, I mean, when we really think about it, art, like really good art, it doesn't just draw from one experience. It draws from multiple sources. So the bit about the Black Book seeming like a ripoff of John Wick. I mean, yes, it looks like a whip-off of John Wick, but it still is a good film because it takes a nuanced approach, on the subject of police brutality and, the weird unseen powers that kind of affect the world around us. So that's what I really wanted to say. And also, I feel like we should stop. I understand our concerns about Nigerian filmmakers trying to make films that look like Hollywood films, but at the same time, let's not forget that the film medium really is not a Nigerian invention. You get it's a foreign invention, so we're trying to adapt to it, and we're trying to like remake the terrain so that it tells more of our stories. And in doing that, there are not like science or anything, but there are rules to visual storytelling. There are techniques, there are specific shots, specific ways you go about telling stories that makes the story more understandable. So the bit about kids running through a kitchen earlier, while I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, you know, there is so much. I think as Nigerians, there is just so much. I see Elizabeth is giving me a thumbs down. I mean, that's your take, and I respect that. Okay, but I feel like there is so much. As Nigerians, there is just so much cliches. Let me put it that way. That our Nigerian filmmakers have to tiptoe through. And the funny thing is, other like people outside, international people seeing our films, they might actually enjoy it, but our concern might just be a bit about, cultural authenticity, which makes sense, but at the same time, like, can we just cut our filmmakers a slack? Like, yes, some of their films suck, okay, but we really, really are doing our best, and we are really doing our best. I mean, thumbs down. I mean, I respect your opinion once again, but like that's what I think. And this is not to say that we shouldn't take mediocre work or anything, but I feel that we really are doing our best. So the only way we can really improve is to encourage our filmmakers and to, at the same time, like Obina mentioned earlier, we need learned script writers. We need people who understand visual languages and how to like properly translate it into the screen. That's my take on it, regardless of what you guys say. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Kings. I appreciate your POV. I'm sure a couple of people want to jump at you. But yes, I think like for both Elizabeth and Vanessa's take on the King books, more detailed take, I think you can listen to the version of to the Nollywood Film Club, either both the good and the bad section if you want. Vanessa usually at the front. I can't remember whether just there, but yes, the Hollywoodification of Nollywood is isn't. I'll say it again because Daniel said it. It's not like drawing identity. It's not matter of having inspiration from different places or from Hollywood. It's about misapplying it to the Nigerian context. Yes, there are some things that works in Hollywood. When you say them in Nigeria, it just doesn't make sense. It sticks out like a sore thumb. That's what people mean by the Hollywoodification of Nollywood. Saying that, oh, I'm going to expose this leader with this thing is with these documents. A politician, that is Hollywood. That is not Nollywood. And like, again, I don't want to do a black book. This thing you can go listen to it. But like, that's what we mean. We mean that there's some things that make sense in Hollywood, but when you do them in Nollywood, they don't make sense because of the context. All right, okay, but no, I'd still appreciate your contribution, Kings. Thanks. And Wayne Rance.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I will just say a couple of things since we're like in the solutions section. I think one of the solutions I'll put out is that we should learn how to tell a story well. A lot of the things about the rules that are in how to tell stories are in film. There are no rules that came from people. There are rules that are embedded in what a good story is. They were just rules that were documented. So a good story has a 3-act structure, not because the 3-act structure was defined by some random guy somewhere in the US or wherever. It's because every story, and this is not just for film, generally, I'm a poet, and it's not just in poetry, it's in songs, it's in every form of storytelling has to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. That is the three-act structure. I mean, we can go more into like technicalities of what the three-act structure is and the timing and you have to set the scene for this. In this act, you are introducing us to the character and all of those things don't really matter. The point is every story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending, and we need to learn how to tell a story. That's one thing that we need to do. The other thing is, so I was checking online for elements of a good film because I think we had spoken about what is a good film, and there are so many things that you can check of like that they have. But I picked out 4 things. It was narrative, cinematography, sound, and editing. And I think if a film has these 4 things done well, it's a good film, right? And so these are the things that we need to do. We need to like narrative, tell a very good story. Cinematography. I don't think I have seen a Nigerian film, and I watch a lot of Nigerian films, and I know this. Everybody here, like we really watch Nigerian films. There was a time when Iroko TV wasn't allowing me pay monthly subscription, so I had to be paying yearly subscription for Iroko TV. God will never allow me to go back to that era. But so I pay for Prime, I pay for Netflix, I pay for so many because I'm not in Nigeria, and these are the only place I can scamper around and like get Nollywood content. So I also understand what Vanessa was saying, where they also have to have some kind of sympathy for us, the people that go out of their way to. My friend group is a large group. I'm like the only one that actively watches Nollywood, and they're always telling me you don't have sense. Like Nollywood films are bad, and I'm the one that always stands up for Nollywood in that group. So it's like I'm a big fan. Anyways, that's so I was like cinematography. I don't think I've seen a lot of Nollywood films, but I've not seen anyone that the cinematography really sticks out. That's where I see the camera movements and how they frame the shots. And it really, really impresses me. I don't think they're really intentional with their cinematography. I see them use some weird shots and some weird angles, but they're not really intentional about that. So we need to fix that. Sound. Yeah, I think that way everybody knows our sound is dustbin. So we need to fix that. And then editing. I think one of the big issues, and I'll just end with this. And one of the big issues we have is our editing. Many times we complain about pacing, but pacing pacing can be shown on the pages of the screenplay, but pacing is really down to the director and the editor. If the editor gives you these jump cuts and all of this thing, it will feel so wrongly paced. So they could have done, the actors could have. Sometimes I watch films and I see some really good actors and they look so bad, especially like action scenes. And I understand the reason why these things look so bad is probably blocking. The person that shot this thing shot it from the wrong angles. You have to shoot it in the right angle so the actor looks like they're acting it well. Because sometimes you see these actors and it looks like they're acting, but they don't look like they're acting because they are acting. I hope I'm not speaking nonsense English. They look like they're acting because of how it was shot. So my last words would be for the Hollywoodification is we should just find the things that we do well and we should keep doing it well. I think there was a time it seemed as though we're going towards an upward trajectory and we got money and money just like exposed us because everybody started getting money and everybody started like ever since Lionheart, Genevieve, and they were making Netflix originals and Prime originals and everything. Everybody has money now, so everybody are just shooting nonsense, right? So I think maybe we should take like a calm down small. Let's do, if we're going to do small productions, just tell a good story. Tell one good story. Tell two good stories. Let these directors have their own language because obviously we know every director has their own language, and then let us build from that. Because the way we are going right now, if we don't call what we are doing in the next 5 years, you will not be able to recognize what you're seeing in Nollywood because we're just yeah.
All right. Okay. So that
Can I?
that
Can
was
I?
that
Can I quickly?
was the last person. We do have to
Okay.
we have to go. We do have to go. Just because of time.
Okay.
But like as we go, I do want people to, if it's 2, if it's 3, if it's 1, this is going to be everybody's last closing sort of their closer. If you have one film that you can recommend me to go, all right, this is the film where I felt like, oh, this is this was progress. This is the kind of storytelling we want to be doing, or this is kind of production I expect from us, or that kind of thing. So I'm going to do a round table. I'm going to start with Vanessa.
I'm gonna probably butcher the name of this, but it's called Nkem Mokan. It's by Dika Ofama. I'm so sorry. This was the most butchered pronunciation of the name. He has never told me how to say it. But it is by Dika Ofama, and I genuinely think Dika Ofama is the future of Nollywood. He's going to be like, why am I saying this? But I genuinely think Dika Ofama is the future of Nollywood, and just go and watch Dika Ofama's filmography. It's pretty much just 3 films right now on YouTube, but Dika Ofama's filmography, go and watch that.
I think he has 4, but
4,
okay.
Abi? Yeah, see,
Um,
my boy is coming up in the world.
all right, okay. About the future of Nollywood, Dika, that guy that has short human being temperament. All right, okay. Sorry, what kept me up? I know you guys came up. You guys are the only one I'm going to give range to say something else, because we did discuss your article. If there's anything you want to say before you give us an example of a movie, you think worth people should watch, or this is the example of good storytelling. What kept me up? Oh, they're not there. All right, the thing is bad. All right. Obina, do you have a film for Nollywood you feel like, yes, this is the area I feel like we should be heading towards in terms of storytelling or production?
Yeah. So in terms of, in terms of, what I think is progress in terms of how you craft a story and you're able to really, really bring your screenplay to life, with how you have captured the development of character and how you captured the character's arc up until the end. I think that actually is one body of work that I think is really, really wholesome in that regard. One other film I sort of like, I think you and I have differed about, I like Sylvia. I think Sylvia was, in terms of the story, in terms of the character, in terms of, the journey of the character, and in terms of technicalities. But I think you had some challenges with the ADR? But I think it was well, because I went to the cinema to watch that film at the time. And at the time it came out, there weren't a lot of technically sound films. And I think that he hit that mark. Those are 2 examples I would say, then in terms of how would I put it now? In terms of, I think for me, to be honest, those are films that are, grounded. I wanted to say something before I sorry, let me just say this before. It's just a response to, the truth about it is that, there is a lot of miles that this industry has to cover. And why do I say this? It took Hollywood over 100 years to get to where it is. Now, the truth about it is that any artist, their first set of expression will be around copying. You go to an exhibition, you see a painting. It's an example of what somebody has seen before, what they have seen. It's like a copy, an express copy. Before you find your identity, you go through that process of where you are trying to copy. It starts by copying, and that's how you know you have the talent, number one. Then it takes you time to develop your own style and your own language. The truth about it is that a good story is a good story in Sri Lanka or in Oshodi. A good story is a good story. So, and that's why I feel that the things that you must imbibe are the technicality. And what we've all talked about here is about technicalities, understanding the rudiments of storytelling, and it cuts across. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Obina. Uchenna, do you have an example? And by the way, Aim Affair for me is the pinnacle, the peak. But Uchenna, please go ahead if you have a film.
I don't have anything that really strikes me as what I would say is the future of Nollywood, but yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that I feel has done pretty well and established some nice signs for the future if we can build on them. Eyimofe, obviously. Sylvia was mentioned. I thought that was really good. Fell apart in the 3rd act, but there was very much to admire about it, and I think that was a pretty good movie. And then I will add again, I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I will add Yahoo Plus.
Okay, all right. I want to fight, obviously. Eyimofe, it's been like as part of the future. That's clearly the pinnacle of where things are. But I will save my fight for another day. All right,
I mean, Emefe was great, but I don't really think it broke new ground. And at the same time, I don't think it was trying to break new ground. That's fine, but I don't really think it's the future of Nollywood because Emefe, let's face it, is an art movie, and Nollywood is a commercial industry. So I don't think Emefe is the future of Nollywood. I just think it's a great film for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the future. It's just like what Mr. C was saying. Something that looks like what quality should look like, and what The truth about it is that look, in another 4-5
okay,
years,
right.
we're not going to be talking about. I mean, things are going to change dramatically. So there's a lot to get to be honest. So yeah.
All right. I think Steven, tell us your film. So I wasn't going to fight. I'm not fighting. Steven, tell us your one. All right. Wayne's Rants, do you have a movie you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, mine is Chief Daddy too.
Okay.
I was joking. I was joking.
Unreported.
Sorry. Funny enough, it's Sylvia. But since they said Sylvia, another film I really enjoy and I want to point out for people to see is Braided Life. I really love the story. I fell in love with it. So yeah.
All right. And Kings.
All right. So for me, story-wise, I mean, most of you guys are probably going to rip me apart for this, but story-wise, I would go with Jagun Jagun. I don't know. There was something about the story that was just so relatable, that I know, right? I mean, the idea of if an overpowered, seeming protagonist, but apparently wasn't a protagonist from to begin with. So the Jagun Jagun story was just really stuck with me. Now, when we talk about visual representation, visual presentation rather, I would go with currently, the Black Book is still my favorite. Although it had issues with sound designs and everything, but yeah, I mean, Vanessa, take it chill now. So yeah, that's my take on it. Visually, Black Book, but story-wise, yeah, Jagun Jagun is my pick. Thank you.
Okay, that's so interesting. Sound design for me for the Black Book is one of the best Nollywood has ever done, and then I know it had lapses like the kung fu, any fighting scene you can just swap out all of that, but just absolute trash.
It was, I don't know, man. It needed help, like supported.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. C. Is there a film you'd recommend?
Yeah, obviously Aim of Air, obviously Juju Stories, and obviously go watch Shorts, The Way Things Happen, and Nkema Condom.
Okay. All right. For me, my pinnacle, like I've said, is Aim Affair. When I said the future, I mean at some point we are going to be able to tell stories like Aim Affair with the consistency, with the quality. We're going to be able to shoot films like that. We're going to be able to make them sound that good. We're going to be able to build sets that. I think we're getting there, but and just have it, and the writing is going to be that good. That's what I mean. You can have that in different genres. I'm not asking for everyone to make, and I don't think A Human Affair is an art movie. I think at some point we're going to make movies that hopefully have that kind of quality. It can be in a different genre. So King of Boys is the other one I would say. So King of Boys has some issues for me, story-wise, but in terms of it was such a big thing that it did with taking a character that felt Nigerian. Again, there is a difference when people. It's not like you can't get inspired, but then we know when you are giving us our people, our story, our language, and when you are giving us Santa Claus, we know the difference. We can feel it. So, whilst King of Boys does have issues for me, like that step it took was very good. Living in Bondage is one I would also say was taking steps in the right direction. So difficult to believe that Child's of Play had that start. In terms of production, in terms of this, how again it was our story as well. It didn't feel like we're borrowing something from somewhere else for the most part, right? There's that's that there. It's funny because like when we complain about this Hollywoodification of Nollywood films, it's like we don't have good examples of films that have both done good production. But anyway, that's restarting the conversation. In general, thank you everybody for this conversation. Was very good. I enjoyed it. Next week we have a Kunle film, so we will be discussing that one. Please do come on time. The rotation has stopped, and so we're not going to be rotating anymore. It's first come, first serve, except if somebody drops off. But thank you so much, guys, for joining this, and hopefully you can continue the conversation in the comments. That's fine. I'll be eating dinner. Thank you very much, guys, for coming. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed listening and would like to join live, just follow us on Twitter at Iroko Critic and join us every Sunday, 6 p.m. West African time on our spaces.